Chapter 1142. Finally, it was time for Poplar Fruit to step onto the TED stage. Of course, before he came up, the host had already given him a brief but detailed introduction. So when Poplar Fruit came up, there was already thunderous applause. "Thank you," Poplar Fruit said with a smile as he held a small remote control. Without any small talk, every minute and every second on the TED stage was extra precious. Poplar Fruit immediately began his speech. When you ask the president of any country, "What is the most precious resource in your country?" they will not answer immediately. They would not immediately answer that it was a child. But when you say children, they will almost immediately agree with you. Poplar Fruit's topic was very subtle. He stated a fact that almost everyone agreed with. In China, we have two different kinds of children. One is the children in the city, and the other is the children in the mountain villages. Poplar Fruit used two pictures of different children. The one in the city was a color picture, and the other was black and white. The contrast was very strong. The education they receive is very different. The children in the city have the best teachers and training classes in China, but in the mountain villages, they are more often than not looking forward to having a teacher. Just one is enough, and they never dare to ask for too much. Poplar Fruit's pictures and simple words at the end of his PowerPoint presentation made it very clear. The Chinese government has been working hard to support the development of the poor areas in the Midwest, but the results are not good. These children in the mountains lack education. Even if there is, the quality of education is very different. It's not that the government is unwilling to support them, but that no teachers are willing to go to the mountains. Poplar Fruit spoke very seriously, but he threw away a little burden and asked with a smile. "Because we all like the city, like the big city. It's just like how young people don't want to stay on the farm and look forward to the tall buildings, fashionable beauties, or handsome guys in the city, right?" Poplar Fruit's rhetorical question made many listeners laugh kindly. Everyone present was knowledgeable, or had high social status. They could understand what Poplar Fruit meant by young people's choice. The future of a country lies in its children, and the best way to change the poverty of a region is not to support it with cash. Similarly, if they want to have a future where they are no longer poor, the breakthrough lies in their children. Poplar Fruit said solemnly, "Education is very important, especially the primary education of children. Because you have knowledge, you have the possibility and motivation to change the future." I tried to think about how to bring education to the children in the mountains when no teachers are willing to stay in the mountains. At this time, I don't want to think better, because we have to have it before we can think better, right? Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Then I had an idea. Why don't I give each of them a computer? This way, through the internet, a window to the world, they can see the world outside the mountains and learn all the knowledge they want to learn. Poplar Fruit's thoughts began to slowly unfold here. The audience was silent. Everyone held their breath and listened to Poplar Fruit's words. "Why a computer?" someone questioned. "You know, a computer is a luxury for these children who can't even fill their stomachs. Even the price of a computer is enough for their family to live for a year, or let them study in a school outside the mountains for half a year." Poplar Fruit switched to the PowerPoint, and a cobweb-shaped picture appeared on the big screen behind him. He continued, "In fact, as I said just now, the most important thing is not the computer itself, but the meaning of the computer. That is education, a better education. Let me give a simple example. The price of a computer can buy 100 books, but through the computer and the internet, our children can access 10 million books. Heavens, which school's library has 10 million books? You mean Harvard University Library, which has 15 million books? Well, it doesn't matter. Forget what I said." Poplar Fruit's little humor caused the audience to laugh. But education is not only about books, especially children's education and primary school education. Children need the guidance of teachers to learn the knowledge they need to enter a better school outside the mountains and enter society. Poplar Fruit laughed. If they are only given a computer, they may only use it to play games. So I thought, why don't we let teachers who are unwilling to go to the mountains teach children through the internet and video? Poplar Fruit jumped quickly and showed a picture of the modern remote education in the Xiong Family Village School on the big screen behind him. There was a clue like a network cable, which led to a picture of a teacher teaching in the city. In fact, there was no need for Poplar Fruit to explain. The principle was very simple, and everyone could understand at a glance. But not many people had thought of it before. It was also because of this shock that the audience sincerely applauded Poplar Fruit. But Poplar Fruit's speech was far from the end. Yes, my idea has received the support of many university volunteers. They are all willing to contribute to the education of these children. And I have already broken the constraints of space and distance. They are really great, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. There was another round of applause. In fact, foreigners also paid a lot of attention to the spirit of voluntary service. After the applause stopped, Poplar Fruit continued. Well, now that we have finished talking about have, let's start looking for better. Poplar Fruit changed to a PowerPoint, which was a picture of the rich education content of the children in the city. In terms of education, in fact, it is still very difficult for them to compete with the children in the city, because the children in the city have piano education, calligraphy and painting education, sports education, and so on since childhood. Some people would say that since they already have education, aren't they satisfied? Poplar Fruit asked and answered his own question. Yes, maybe the children are satisfied, but I am not satisfied. I want these children to also have a very good quality education, not just the knowledge required in the textbooks. Because all men are equal. All men recreate equal. Poplar Fruit's last sentence was not shouted without basis. It was the most classic sentence from the United States Declaration of Independence. Suddenly, this sentence seemed to have poked the itch of the audience. Although it was held in Canada, most of the audience were Americans. Yes, as if Poplar Fruit had raised his arm and shouted. The audience was excited and loudly agreed with Poplar Fruit's statement. They even applauded desperately. Chapter 1143. In Vancouver's famous Phil Golden Hall, where the TED conference was held, nearly 1,000 audience members sat quietly in their seats. They stared intently at the elegant speaker on the stage, as if the excitement just now had never happened. The TED conference had never been about appearances or countries. A speaker's appearance, country, and fluency did not have much of an impact on the popularity of the speech. That was because people only cared about whether the ideas expressed in the speech were interesting or not. But it was undeniable that a handsome face could be pleasing to the eyes, and fluent oral fluency could make people feel comfortable listening to it. Poplar Fruit had indeed achieved these 2 points. To a certain extent, this added a lot of luster to his speech. However, the reason why everyone listened to Poplar Fruit's speech with such rapt attention was because the content of Poplar Fruit's speech was wonderful. The model of remote teaching seemed to have opened a door in front of them, a door that could change the world and shock their hearts. If you want to make distance education better, you have to make it better. This important key lies in our little computer. Poplar Fruit was in high spirits as he changed the PowerPoint presentation. For remote education, we have developed an online learning system. Through this system, students can do homework. The system will give them questions, give them marks, guide them to check and fill in the gaps. It can also collect questions that they don't know how to do or don't do well enough. After a period of time, the children can find them again in the questions of their own homework. The teacher can also understand the knowledge points that the students did not learn well enough through the data feedback from the system. Of course, homework is only a small function of this system, Poplar Fruit said confidently. We don't arrange a lot of homework for the students in class. Poplar Fruit said, the biggest significance of this system is that it can help students to discover and learn on their own. We are very grateful for the help of the large number of outstanding college student volunteers. We have recorded and updated more than 300 kinds of interest courses in the system. This covers sports, art, philosophy, literature, and even computer programming. As long as the children are willing, they can find their favorite interest courses through our system to self-study. It's not just the video mode. You can see that our engineers have designed many rich and interesting self-learning modes for this system. Poplar Fruit directly played a 20-second video. After the video ended, people couldn't help but applaud Poplar Fruit. Thank you, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. However, Poplar Fruit wanted to continue. This time he used more direct figures and graphs to explain. I'm very honored that the long-distance education model I initiated has received the support of the Chinese government. It's also because of this promotion that as of March, 47 million children in poor mountainous areas have received long-distance education. This number has already reached 80% of the poor children in China, and we believe that this number will continue to increase in the future. Poplar Fruit's statement received some applause, but not much. After all, this was an internal issue of China. Even if it was shocking, everyone still felt that it was somewhat irrelevant. Poplar Fruit had already expected this. His speech finally came to the last part. The first part was have, the second part was better, and the last part was Poplar Fruit's entire speech had to be sublimated. This was also the time for the foreshadowing to come into play. In October 2014, I gave a speech at Capital University, hoping to inspire more young people to invest in public welfare. Poplar Fruit changed a picture. In the picture, the background was a Centennial Hall, while the main characters were Poplar Fruit and a dark-skinned young man. His name is Mukaru, an international student from Tanzania. After his speech, he came to me and asked if I could bring this model of distance education to the African continent, so that the out-of-school children in his other homeland, the Congo, could also receive an education, a better education. The audience's interest was once again piqued by Poplar Fruit. They held their breaths, and the entire hall was silent. Not even the sound of typing on the keyboard could be heard. My first reaction at that time was, how is that possible? Poplar Fruit spread his hands and made a surprised expression. It's not that I don't want to, but everyone knows that that's Africa, that's the Congo, the poorest and most chaotic country in the world. The PowerPoint showed a screenshot of an American media report. A group of anti-government soldiers wielding AK rifles were dragging behind a dirty pickup truck. They want distance education, but do they have computers and internet? Poplar Fruit continued to throw out questions. Even if we can support them, can these children protect these computers and not let the bad guys take them away? Poplar Fruit's questions were like a hammer hitting the hearts of everyone in the audience. Later, we redesigned distance education according to the actual situation in Tanzania and the Congo. We've built a simple, portable camp not far from the village. Not only are there remote education rooms equipped with computers, but there are also other NGOs and charity organizations, such as the Red Cross and other medical aid teams, such as the United Nations World Food Program aid teams. We'll ask the local government army and the United Nations peacekeeping force to help protect the camp. This way, our camp can be considered a more comprehensive aid community. Poplar Fruit showed a few pictures taken by Mukaru. Food aid is to help the local people who can't even eat to solve their survival problems. Medical aid is to help them get rid of the threat of illness and death. Education aid is equally important. Poplar Fruit looked around and said solemnly, "We can't change their poverty, but we can help them gain the ability to change themselves." There's an ancient Chinese medicine saying that if you treat the symptoms but not the root cause, then it's meaningless because the illness will relapse. Poplar Fruit translated the complicated ancient language into sentences that even foreigners could understand. To change the current situation of poverty in Africa, we can't blindly provide them with aid. This is only treating the symptoms. We need to spread civilization so that they will no longer be ignorant. We need to give them the ability to change their lives and the lives of the people around them. Only then can we stop the transmission of their poverty from the root. This is also the meaning of our distance education. Poplar Fruit bowed deeply. At this point, his speech came to an end. And this full stop was also perfect. Because nearly 1,000 people in the audience stood up and clapped for Poplar Fruit. The applause was thunderous and lasted for a long time like a storm. Chapter 1144. The applause lasted for a long time, and no one counted. Poplar Fruit repeatedly bowed. Finally, the founder of TED, Mr. Anderson, pulled Poplar Fruit back to the stage and pretended to have a chat with Poplar Fruit. Only then did the applause gradually stop. "Leon, thank you for sharing." Mr. Anderson smiled and patted Poplar Fruit on the shoulder. It was not uncommon for Mr. Anderson to chat with the speakers after a speech. In the past 2 days, As long as the speaker was recognized by everyone and had a more innovative or breakthrough idea, he would personally come to the stage. This was also a form of gratitude to the speaker. The old man was tall and thin, and his hair was a little gray, but his blue eyes were bright. He himself was also a person who liked to give speeches. With his expertise, TED had become the world's most profound and extensive public speaking event. Many world-famous people were willing to come here to share their ideas. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Foreigners did not need too much etiquette. Poplar Fruit just smiled and said calmly, I am very grateful for your invitation. You know, this is really a surprise. No, you are a full surprise to us. Look at the magical ideas you have brought. I think all of our listeners have the highest respect for your sharing, because you have brought hope to that poor land, Mr. Anderson said with his hands open. As soon as his voice fell, many people began to applaud. Thank you. As Ted said, ideas are worth spreading. With my ability alone, or a few people's ability, it is impossible to change the current situation of poverty in Africa, and it is impossible to spread the light of education to every poor corner. Poplar Fruit paused, then looked at the nearly 1,000 audience members and said loudly, But at TED, if I spread this model of distance education, this idea of public welfare, with TED's hundreds of millions of viewers, there will be more people, more funds, and more NGOs joining. You mean that everyone can use your model of distance education to help the children in Africa? Mr. Anderson asked. Of course, not only the children in Africa, but all human children in the world should receive education, whether it is traditional education or distance education. The idea of public welfare should be open and shared. I'm very willing to communicate with organizations that are willing to invest in public education. I'm also very willing to see the value of distance education in other public welfare organizations or countries. Excellent. Really? Mr. Anderson patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder and said, Leon, it's no exaggeration to say that your speech has left me with the deepest impression and the strongest shock I've ever heard. Mr. Anderson's high praise was the first time in the history of the TED conference, but no one would refute Mr. Anderson's praise because they felt the same way. Ladies and gentlemen, let us once again thank Leon Yang with a warm round of applause. Mr. Anderson was the first to applaud, and then the applause continued until Poplar Fruit walked off the stage under Mr. Anderson's guidance. Poplar Fruit was actually very excited at the moment. He had prepared a lot for this speech, but he did not expect it to be so successful. Looking at the eyes of the audience who were applauding, Poplar Fruit's heart was filled with strength. What Poplar Fruit did not know was that before he returned to China, the video of the speech had already been uploaded to major domestic and foreign video websites. In just one day, the number of views had exceeded 100 million, and on the second and third days, under the coverage of major media outlets, the number of views of the video had increased exponentially. One had to know that this was a speech video that people who liked it would like, and people who did not like it would not even watch. To be able to get such a high number of views, it did not make sense to use Poplar Fruit's influence to explain it. It could only be said that Poplar Fruit's speech was really shocking, and his ideas did indeed receive the support of a lot of audience members. Not to mention the attention that Poplar Fruit's speech received on the internet. On the afternoon of the third day, at the time of the closing of the TED conference, Poplar Fruit and two other speakers received the grand prize of today's TED conference from Mr. Anderson at the closing ceremony. Poplar Fruit's award had actually been decided as early as yesterday when Mr. Anderson gave such a high evaluation. However, at today's award ceremony, several things were announced that surprised Poplar Fruit and made him feel emotional. One had to know that the three winners of the TED conference every year, in addition to the prize money, would receive the support of TED. The TED organizers would help the winners realize their ideas. The more famous one was the former richest man in the world, Mr. Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, who often visited the TED conference. He often sponsored speakers at the TED conference to realize their ideas. After Poplar Fruit received the award, Mr. Anderson solemnly announced that several rich people, including Mr. Bill Gates, would jointly invest $500 million to establish a global charity fund for distance education. $500 million. This was a huge amount of money that was more than 3 billion yuan. Not to mention that Poplar Fruit's own charity fund did not have that much money. Even the current domestic government's investment in distance education was not more than 3 billion yuan. This was only the investment of a few rich people. With publicity and the influence of these rich people, it was believed that there would be more donations. Poplar Fruit was invited to be the chief consultant and spokesperson of the foundation, to cooperate with NGOs around the world who volunteered to devote themselves to charity education. Starting from Africa, they were committed to education assistance for poor children around the world. Of course, Poplar Fruit would not refuse this invitation. The chief consultant was mainly because Poplar Fruit proposed this idea, and Poplar Fruit did have the ability to communicate with people all over the world. The spokesperson was a bit interesting. Poplar Fruit was actually not a celebrity, but it was undeniable that Poplar Fruit had a good influence all over the world. Starting from supermodel, Poplar Fruit appeared in the eyes of foreign media every year, and this influence was positive. As a result, the burden on Poplar Fruit's shoulders would be much heavier. But responsibility and opportunity came together. From the beginning of the study of distance education, didn't Poplar Fruit already have a dream in his heart to change the world? When Poplar Fruit flew home across the Pacific Ocean, the domestic and foreign media rushed to report the establishment of this charity fund. Poplar Fruit also occupied a lot of the pages. Compared with the caution or modesty of the domestic media, foreign media had already praised Poplar Fruit to the sky. At the beginning, it was just a title of praise for Poplar Fruit in the academic world, but now it was also used by foreign media. The father of future education, the father of distance education, or the father of African enlightenment, these praises were obviously a bit exaggerated. Even Poplar Fruit himself couldn't help but blush when he heard about it later. Chapter 1145. Poplar Fruit returned to Guangzhou with great momentum. The entire country's media was reporting on Poplar Fruit's speech and success. Not only that, many of the country's official mouthpieces praised Poplar Fruit's philanthropic spirit. Poplar Fruit felt that they were overpraising him. He wasn't a philanthropic person. He only did what he thought was right. It was just that because of the huge innovation of this good deed, many people thought that it was amazing. Poplar Fruit even felt that the reason why distance education could help so many people was because his hard work was just a little bit more than the university volunteers. At the same time, it couldn't be separated from the strong support of the country. Poplar Fruit was also well aware that the Global Distance Education Charity Fund was definitely a backstage game between the Western countries and the Chinese government. Can't you see that Yang Guo is just a small consultant and spokesperson? At most, he was a mascot pushed to the front by both sides. Perhaps Poplar Fruit had zero control over the foundation. Poplar Fruit wouldn't tell anyone about this. Poplar Fruit wouldn't just be a mascot. Since he was the consultant, Poplar Fruit would make his due contribution. Perhaps, when summer vacation came, it would be good to take Kiki and Fong Bebe to Africa to see lions and elephants. After Poplar Fruit returned to Guangzhou, he accepted a few interviews that he couldn't reject. Then he quieted down and went to school, Kiki's kindergarten, and home every day. However, Poplar Fruit still didn't know that because of the explosive news overseas, it attracted the attention of the domestic media. Coincidentally, it was all seen by one person, Mango TV. Recently, the program team of Where Are We Going, Dad? Had been opposing producer Xia. The main problem was the selection of guests for the third season. Most of the stars and cute children in the first and second seasons earned a lot of attention and money. Not to mention the adorable children. The fathers even borrowed their children's popularity. The most typical example was Tian Liang, who jumped from an outdated Olympic star to a popular person in the entertainment industry. His value soared, and the advertising fees for the advertisements that he and his daughter co-starred in were calculated in the basic unit of millions. When they were preparing for the second season, some of the guests were people from the station or people from outside the station who had connections. They had no choice but to accept it. As expected, producer Xia and the entire program team suffered. Not to mention the failure of the program's ratings. It wasn't as good as The Running Man on other TV stations. A guest used the program to hype up a movie, causing the program team to be chased by reporters. In the third season, the promoted producer Xie decided that all the guests had to be chosen from the perspective of the program. Even if they had connections, they had to see if they were suitable for the program. In the end, producer Xie still couldn't completely fall out with these connections. However, he didn't expect that there were still many people who objected to his proposed guest list. Especially the only female guest list, Little Red, was objected to by everyone. These voices came from within the program team. Producer Xie knew that there must be some agency's money and connections causing trouble, but he couldn't do anything about it. For the female guests, producer Xie intended to choose the Taiwanese program host, the Canadian Xia Kelly, and his Chinese-Canadian daughter, Poppy. As for the reason, producer Xie wrote it very clearly. He wanted to bring some elements to the third season that were different from the past. In other words, the so-called foreigners. Producer Xie felt that with the addition of foreigners, there might be some innovation in the conflict of the show's characters, not the kind of conflict where they quarreled. Furthermore, Xia Kelly himself knew quite a lot about Chinese culture. As a foreigner standing in front of the television, it would be easy for him to give off a refreshing feeling. On the other hand, producer Xie also considered international influence. In the past, the first and second seasons of Where Are You Going, Daddy? Had Taiwanese guests, so it was more popular there. However, this time, Xia Kelly could still spread his influence to the other side of the ocean, and into the eyes of the Caucasians in the United States and Canada. This was definitely a great success for the program team. This could also be seen from the fact that he chose Lu Yi as a guest. Lu Yi was a native Chinese, but his wife was French. Their family had even filmed French programs before, so they were quite famous in France. However, this reason was also used by the other people in the program team to question him. Who said that the show's influence can spread overseas just by choosing a foreigner? Many people scoffed at this. Xia Kelly had always been active in Taiwanese. In the past, he was only a behind-the-scenes reporter in Canada. He had some influence in Taiwanese, but to spread it to the United States and Canada was really a pipe dream. There were also many programs in the country that invited foreigners as guests, but they didn't see foreigners paying attention to it. Don't forget that the entertainment programs in the United States were hundreds of times more colorful than those in China. Even in South Korea, the original variety program team of this program dared not say that they could spread their influence to the United States. At the end of the day, Where Are You Going, Daddy? Was a program for the common people. It was highly praised by the masses because the program was very down to earth. If a foreigner with blonde hair and blue eyes were suddenly introduced into the program, even if the young people could accept it, what if the older uncles and aunties could not accept it? Don't lose the watermelon and pick up the sesame seed. This sentence was a tactful way for a leader to express his dissatisfaction with producer Xie. Producer Xie sneered in his heart. How could he not know that the note that the assistant director of his program team passed to him a while ago was written by this leader? He didn't know who paid him, but he insisted on bringing in a famous actor who had recently appeared in variety shows. To be honest, producer Xie was not very against this actor who worked hard to become a big star step by step. If the conditions were right, producer Xie did not mind giving him face. However, the other party also wanted to bring his daughter. Not to mention that she was young, she did not fit the role of the most important female guest in the third season of the program. Producer Xie wanted to take on all the pressure himself, and once in a while, he would decide on Xia Kelly and his daughter. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit once again appeared in their sights. He had international influence. After the TED Talk, Poplar Fruit's foreign media attention was no less than that of the leaders of China. He was definitely more influential than Xia Kelly, needless to say. Not to mention his domestic influence. Poplar Fruit was one of the top 10 people who touched China this year. His name was probably included in the political science exam questions. He had the identity of a Chinese citizen. A handsome young man born and raised in the countryside would definitely be popular with middle-aged and elderly women. Poplar Fruit's dominance among the young people was also unquestionable. The tens of millions of fans on Weibo were not just for show. This girl had always been producer Xie's choice. She had great popularity in the country. Moreover, from her and her father's appearance on some occasions and Weibo videos, she completely fit the role of the third season of the program. The most important thing was her looks. Friends with Poplar Fruit's handsomeness and Kiki's beauty, they could definitely become the third season's attractiveness factor. Yes, Poplar Fruit was quite good. If it was Poplar Fruit, other people's previous doubts could be eliminated in one fell swoop. Moreover, it would not cause the roles of two mixed-race children to overlap at the same time. This was also something that producer Sia was somewhat conflicted about previously. Moreover, if it was Poplar Fruit, producer Sia could also pull in a strong ally, Teacher He. If he and Teacher He both spoke out in support of Poplar Fruit being a guest, who else would object? Yes, it was Poplar Fruit. Producer Sia finally made a decision in his heart. Chapter 1146. Although producer Sia had already decided on Poplar Fruit and Kiki as the guests for the third season of Where Do You Go, Dad? The list hadn't been finalized yet. There were still one or two Xing dads that needed further consideration. Therefore, before everything was settled, Poplar Fruit hadn't received any notice. Now there was still a problem in front of Poplar Fruit. He had promised Zheng Mingxing that he would lay his cards on the table with Zheng Yujia. Even if he was in a dilemma, he couldn't avoid it anymore, right? Zheng Yujia had already returned from abroad, and he had also returned from abroad. There was no reason why he couldn't find an opportunity to communicate with Zheng Yujia. Moreover, the publishing house had gathered all the executives for a meeting today to discuss the transformation of the new translation route to a traditional and e-commerce publishing house. Yang Gui didn't pay attention to what everyone was discussing in the meeting room. He didn't even dare to raise his head to look at Zheng Yujia. Although he pretended to be listening, he was just hiding the fact that he had a lot on his mind. After the meeting, the other executives had already returned to their departments. Poplar Fruit followed Zheng Yujia to her office. The assistant brought a cup of steaming hot coffee for each of them, but Zheng Yujia immediately waved her hand to dismiss her. Poplar Fruit gently fiddled with a photo frame on Zheng Yujia's desk. The photo was of Zheng Yujia and her younger brother Zheng Taiming. It should have been taken when Zheng Taiming graduated. Zheng Taiming was still wearing his academic gown. Of course, Poplar Fruit's attention wasn't on the photo frame. He just didn't know how to open his mouth. There's a button below. Zheng Yujia's voice softly came from behind Poplar Fruit. Every time she was alone with Poplar Fruit, Zheng Yujia's strong female attitude disappeared without a trace. When Poplar Fruit heard this, he gently pressed the button. Suddenly, the photo frame rolled on its own and another photo appeared. It was a picture of mountains and rivers. There were lush cliffs and sparkling seas. Therefore, it could be considered a picture of mountains and rivers. However, the main characters of the photo were obviously the couple in the photo. The man was carrying the woman, and the woman was smiling like a flower. She was in high spirits. It was a memory from a long time ago, although it had only been 3 years. Poplar Fruit turned around and saw the tired Zheng Yujia. Her eyes were filled with sadness. He forced a smile and said, "I almost forgot that you took a picture of me back then." However, Zheng Yujia did not intend to continue Poplar Fruit's conversation. She softly said, directly revealing the topic that Poplar Fruit was still hesitating about. "My dad asked you to come, right?" Poplar Fruit was surprised and asked, "You already know?" Zheng Yujia smiled lazily and said with disdain, "Of course I know. He even asked me in a roundabout way if I had seen you recently. Furthermore, during the Spring Festival he quarreled with his family in Beijing. What else can I not guess?" Poplar Fruit was silent. In the end he asked, "Then what do you think? Is it important what I think?" Zheng Yujia looked at Poplar Fruit with sadness in her eyes and asked. It was not whether it was important or not, but what was the use of Zheng Yujia thinking? If it was useful, it would not have dragged on with Poplar Fruit until now without any results. The silly Poplar Fruit nodded and said solemnly, "It is important." Zheng Yujia smiled sweetly and hooked her finger at Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit hesitated for a moment and lowered his head. However, he turned his face slightly. Zheng Yujia only moved closer to Poplar Fruit's ear and said softly, "What I think is not important. What is important is what you think." Poplar Fruit was not used to the fragrance in the air. He raised his head and looked at Zheng Yujie. I just want to know what kind of decision you made. Zheng Yujie's tone was still a little frivolous. However, Poplar Fruit saw a heart-piercing pain in her eyes. Although the two of them were like guessing riddles, everyone knew what they were talking about. I don't know. Poplar Fruit blurted out. This answer was completely different from what Poplar Fruit had promised Zheng Mingsheng, and the decision he made before coming here. However, Yangguo didn't know why she would give such an answer out of the blue. Perhaps it was because of the photo that awakened his memories. Perhaps it was because of the pain in Zheng Yujie's eyes. Or perhaps he did not have an answer in his heart. Zheng Yujie suddenly smiled. Her smile was very bright. Her smile was brighter than ever. It was as if the spring breeze had dyed the peach blossoms red and blown away the tiredness and sadness. I know you have me in your heart. Zheng Yujie put her hands behind her back and turned in a circle on her shiny black high heels. She smiled and said in high spirits. It's not what you think. Poplar Fruit quickly waved his hand and explained. That's right, that's right. Zheng Yujie's shamelessness made Poplar Fruit smile helplessly. It seemed that this showdown was destined to not have any good results. Poplar Fruit could only stop Zheng Yujie and said, Yujie, that's enough. Stop messing around and listen to my explanation. In the end, Poplar Fruit was frightened by Zheng Yujie suddenly standing on her tiptoes and leaning forward on his shoulder. He could not help but lean back and almost lay down on Zheng Yujie's desk. However, the photo frame behind him was already on the desk. Zheng Yujie gently pressed her hands on Poplar Fruit's chest and slightly supported herself. She looked at Poplar Fruit with a very oppressive gaze. Her red lips moved slightly and said, I don't want to hear your explanation. I want to hear the voice in your heart and your body's reaction. It was also because of Poplar Fruit's amazing physical fitness that he was able to lean back nearly 90 degrees without being pressed down on the desk by Zheng Yujie. However, Zheng Yujie's every word, including the soft touch on his chest, was a great challenge to Poplar Fruit's body and mind. Leaning on Poplar Fruit's body, Zheng Yujie looked at Poplar Fruit's handsome face and his deep eyes. She could not control herself and took the lead to move closer to Poplar Fruit's lips. Was she going to be pushed back? If that was the case, Poplar Fruit would not be Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit blocked his mouth with one hand, and then used his waist to support Zheng Yujie with the other hand. Yujie. Poplar Fruit did not know whether to laugh or cry as he used a tissue to wipe the lipstick mark on his palm. However, looking at Zheng Yujie's stubborn eyes, he could not scold or hit her. He could only resentfully say, You're being naughty again. It was as if he was scolding Kiki. However, this trick was quite effective on Zheng Yujie. She no longer moved and obediently stood to the side. Poplar Fruit sighed softly and said, I won't persuade you. Persuading you would be cruel to you. I really can't do it. Zheng Yujie nodded obediently and really turned into an obedient child. Poplar Fruit could not help but be long-winded. But we don't have a future, do you know that? It's okay, I don't care. Zheng Yujie's pitiful look made Poplar Fruit really unable to scold her. Anyway, what I mean is that you shouldn't keep waiting. Maybe one day you'll meet your happiness. You have to seize it. After Poplar Fruit finished speaking, he wiped his hands and ran away. Zheng Yujie's electrifying eyes could not be looked at too much. If he looked again, Poplar Fruit was really afraid that he would not be able to control himself. After Poplar Fruit ran away, Zheng Yujie sat on the chair and laughed foolishly for a long time. When she came back to her senses, the coffee on the table that her assistant had poured for her had already turned cold. After hesitating for a moment, Zheng Yujie did not ask her assistant to change it. Instead, she brought the 2 cups of coffee that she had not drunk to herself. She folded her hands on the table and leaned her head down. She was lost in thought as she looked at the 2 cups of coffee, the photo frame that Poplar Fruit had held up before he left, and the picturesque photo in the photo frame. The coffee would turn cold as she waited. However, as long as she cherished it and did not change it, it would still be that cup of fragrant coffee. Yes, Zheng Yujie believed that it would still be the taste that she liked. Chapter 1147. Recently, Poplar Fruit had become busy again. However, it was not because of work, but because of happiness. There were not many troublesome matters at work. Even for the Global Distance Education Charity Fund, Poplar Fruit had only held several video conferences with the other party. It was still in the preparation period, so Poplar Fruit did not need to worry too much. Poplar Fruit, on the other hand, wrote a book. It was not a literary book, but a slightly boring theoretical book. He spent nearly 300,000 words to introduce his experience and ideas on distance education in detail. Poplar Fruit published some bold ideas that had yet to be implemented in the book one by one. The book would be published, but it would not be based on sales. It would be provided to the Global Distance Education Charity Fund, as well as NGOs around the world who were interested in it. However, compared to the Global Distance Education Charity Fund, China's layout in this regard was much faster. Poplar Fruit also cooperated with the Chinese government, putting in more effort than the former. He could already see that the Chinese government had hired a large number of university graduates to teach Africa's Mogentia. More than 30 distance education camps had been opened, spread across 8 countries in Africa that had friendly relations with China. There was no need to mention these things. So, what was Poplar Fruit's happiness? Half of Kiki's second semester in kindergarten had passed in the blink of an eye. In the middle of the semester, Kiki's kindergarten would hold a small party. However, it was not a group of children in Chinese kindergartens who would perform a dance with their faces blushing, but a drama performance that was often played in Western countries. It might be more appropriate to describe it as a drama night instead of a party. Not only that, the kindergarten would also display the children's calligraphy and painting works, traditional Chinese culture lessons, and handmade works. These were not classified as good-looking or ugly. After all, they were all children who had not gone to school yet. No one would ask too much of them. Unless they were too busy with business and could not make it, the parents would all attend to appreciate the children's works and performances. Although the performance in Kiki's class was a very simple fairy tale drama, and the kindergarten had prepared the props, Poplar Fruit still needed to accompany Kiki, who had to play an important role. Snow White, to practice her lines. Fong Beibei also went to find a tailor to make a beautiful princess dress for Kiki. Kiki received such an important role in her first fairy tale drama, which made the little girl so excited that she could not sleep for several days. Kiki was especially serious. For her first acting, Kiki prepared almost every day. She even abandoned herself at night to watch cartoons for an hour every day, pulling her father and mother, repeatedly practicing. Yang Guo actually had some complaints about Chi-Chi's role. It wasn't that he was worried that Chi-Chi wouldn't be able to handle the pressure of being the main character. It was just that he couldn't accept the fact that there was a kissing scene in this role. There was actually a little bastard who hugged and kissed my daughter. Poplar Fruit was depressed for a few days, and he could not eat happily. Fong Beibei also laughed at Poplar Fruit, saying that he was jealous of his daughter. Children, how can they know what kissing means? Moreover, this kissing scene is not a kiss on the mouth, but a gentle kiss on the forehead. Fong Beibei smiled and comforted Poplar Fruit. If they don't kiss Snow White, will this fairy tale drama still be Snow White? Well, if that was the case, Yang Guo could still barely accept it. During the rehearsal, Kiki's performance was very good, including the scene with her father after coming back. However, Poplar Fruit was still very worried, because he knew that everything could only be seen when they actually went on stage. Who knew if the children could bear the pressure of the audience? Fong Beibei understood Poplar Fruit's feelings, but in order to not let Poplar Fruit, who was overly concerned, be long-winded and affect Kiki, Fong Beibei directly deprived Poplar Fruit of the right to send Kiki to kindergarten that morning. Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei only went to the kindergarten to participate in the activity in the evening. Before going, Poplar Fruit, this guy, was still thinking about what to wear. Should he wear the most handsome suit? Okay. Did you forget that you watched American dramas? The foreigners dress more casually. Originally, this activity was for parents and children to have fun together. Don't be so nervous and scare the children. Fong Beibei rebuked. Poplar Fruit said stubbornly. How could that be? Didn't you see that Mitchell and Cameron both attach great importance to their daughter's school program? Modern Family. Fong Beibei looked at him and didn't say anything. Poplar Fruit lowered his head, pursed his lips and said, Okay, I know. When they arrived at the kindergarten, Poplar Fruit saw the super beautifully dressed Kiki version of Snow White. She wore a fluffy princess dress and an exquisite princess crown. Especially the little girl who didn't need any makeup. She was just like what was described in the original novel. This girl's skin is as white as snow, her cheeks are as red as apples, and her hair is black and soft. She was so beautiful that if anyone saw her, they would really like her. Because there was still the final preparation, Kiki reluctantly said goodbye to her parents and followed her teacher and friends backstage. Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei took advantage of the fact that the program hadn't started yet to admire the children's works that were displayed in the kindergarten's hall. Poplar Fruit even started to show off his daughter crazily. He asked Fong Beibei to take a few photos of him and Kiki's works, and then uploaded them to Weibo to share with the fans. However, whether it was Poplar Fruit or the fans who were looking forward to it, what they wanted to see the most tonight was Kiki's performance. There were already many fans who left comments on Poplar Fruit's new Weibo, asking Poplar Fruit to quickly post Kiki's photos. The drama night finally began. The senior students' fairy tale plays came out first, and Kiki's performance was in the middle. Obviously, they couldn't expect too much from these children who hadn't yet reached school age. Even the senior children had stage fright halfway through the performance, and were carried away by the teacher while crying. Fortunately, his role wasn't important, and the scene was chaotic for a while, so he could still continue acting. No matter what kind of role the parents played in the business world during the day, tonight, they were all soft-hearted people in front of the children. They would cheer for the children's unnatural performances and cheer for them when they made mistakes. Anyway, the atmosphere was happy and harmonious, just right. Finally, it was Kiki's performance time. When the little guys appeared, Poplar Fruit applauded excitedly. He just didn't introduce to the people next to him. The most beautiful Snow White is my daughter. Yes, my daughter. Poplar Fruit was still a little shy. Fong Beibei took on the responsibility of taking photos and videos, because Poplar Fruit was always excited when he saw Kiki's performance. When he was excited, he would dance with joy. That wouldn't do. Chapter 1148. A long time ago, in a beautiful country, there lived a king and a queen. They longed to have a child. The first act slowly began with a girl's narration. In order to let every child participate, the teacher also painstakingly wrote the script, and even let a few children, who did not dare to go on stage, wear good-looking props and take turns to read the narration. The upperclassmen's fairy tale drama was performed in Chinese, but Chi-Chi's classmates, there were more foreign children, couldn't do it. They were too young, and their Chinese wasn't good enough. They couldn't even memorize the lines. No matter how good the lines were, the most important thing was the children's performance, wasn't it? But when the king and queen came out, the parents all laughed, because the child who played the king was wearing glasses with a white beard on his small face, which was very interesting. However, maybe everyone's laughter scared the children, and they stood there at a loss, timid and pitiful. It's okay. Come on. The parents quickly made up for it and cheered them up. After all, they were the youngest children, and it was inevitable that something would happen. Their nervousness gradually disappeared under the gentle encouragement of the parents. But they looked at each other and did not say their lines. The two children forgot their lines. The adults were secretly worried for the two children. Seeing them pouting, they were so anxious that they were about to cry. At this time, the girl who played the queen looked backstage for help. From the side of the curtain, a soft voice came out. God. Although the voice was very low, everyone was quiet at this time, so it was heard clearly. Yonggwa didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She pulled Fong Beibei's hand and said, "That's Chi-Chi." Anyway, someone reminded the children, and they finally remembered their lines. God. We are all good kings and queens, please give us a child. The king and queen said in a disjointed voice. It didn't matter, the flaws could not obscure the beauty. Finally, God appeared with Snow White in front of the king and queen. The plot was so good that it made the parents convulse with laughter. Kiki came out and hugged the queen. Poplar Fruit saw that the little girl's eyes were flexibly scanning the audience. She still had time to look for people in the performance. Fong Beibei was holding a DV, which Poplar Fruit bought specially for today, and was recording, so she did not realize this. Poplar Fruit felt that his daughter was looking for him, and he immediately waved his arms excitedly to greet Kiki. Kiki found her father, and her beautiful big eyes suddenly curved into crescents. After this scene, the Kiki also returned backstage. Next, the queen passed away, and a bad new queen came on stage. It was very fun, because in addition to the main characters, there were children playing the role of a mirror. Magic mirror, who is the most beautiful woman in the world? The plot suddenly changed. After receiving the magic mirror's answer, the bad queen ordered 2 guards in armor to kill Snow White. Kiki was finally going to appear again. Poplar Fruit immediately perked up to enjoy his daughter's performance. When the guards drew their swords to kill the princess, they saw the princess picking flowers without any worries. Snow White was pure and kind, like an angel. This was an adjective, and it was very difficult to express it through performance or lines. However, Chi-Chi was practically acting as herself, and when she looked over with her clear and flawless big eyes, almost every audience member was reminded of these characteristics of Snow White. In the end, the guards did not make a move, and they let Snow White escape into the forest. Snow White escaped into the forest, and became good friends with the 7 dwarves. Everyone had a line and all the children acted very well. Kiki was the same. She did not learn to act, but because memorizing lines was easy for her, she spent more energy on the actions. The other children would more or less forget a few of their actions, and some would even stand still in the same spot. This was not a big deal. After all, the audience did not have high expectations for children, and watching children act was very interesting. However, because Kiki was able to complete those actions, Kiki's performance as Snow White was more vivid and cute. Poplar Fruit whispered in Fong Bei's ear, and he was not stingy with his praise for his daughter's performance. Fong Bei smiled and turned to Poplar Fruit, and said, "Do you know that your voice has been recorded?" Poplar Fruit gave a V sign and chuckled. "Don't film me. Hurry up and film Chi-Chi. Kiki is coming up again." It turned out that the situation had suddenly changed. The bad queen, who found that Snow White was not dead, took the poisoned apple to murder Snow White, and the kind Snow White held the red apple and bit it. She really ate it. Poplar Fruit was surprised to see Kiki take a bite of the apple. The little girl foolishly and happily said to the bad queen, "It's delicious." This line was designed by the teacher, but it was indeed a good joke. The parents in the audience were amused. The plot continued, but Snow White, who was killed by the poisoned apple, was lying on a stage surrounded by flowers. Kiki's part was temporarily absent. Poplar Fruit watched the black child play the prince. He curled his lips and muttered in his heart, "This is the part I'm the most unhappy about." He did not say it here, worried that others would think he was racist, because there were many foreign parents around. However, Poplar Fruit was not racist. He was just jealous when he saw a child kiss his daughter. He did not care if the other party was a child or an adult, black or white or Chinese. Youngwood didn't really care what the plot was or what the lines were. His eyes were fixed on the black kid as he walked step by step towards Chi-Chi, who was lying among the flowers. Hey, he didn't kiss her. He just touched her hair, and he even touched the crown. Poplar Fruit's wide eyes suddenly became radiant. His mood suddenly became as bright as the blue sky above Bayun Mountain in April. Fong Bei snickered. She had just been held by Poplar Fruit, so she could clearly feel the inner struggle in Poplar Fruit's heart. Poplar Fruit finally made it to the end of Kiki's fairy tale performance. He could not wait to stand up and applaud Kiki. Although all the parents were applauding, Chi-Chi's smile was like a crescent moon, and her beautiful eyes were only filled with her father's exaggerated thumbs up. After the performance, Kiki did not need to remove the props like the other children. She was directly carried back to the seat by her father with her fluffy dress. Kiki's performance was great. Poplar Fruit's face was full of smiles. He was reluctant to let go of Kiki. Papa, the drama is so fun. Kiki is so happy. In her father's arms, Kiki was still wearing the crown. She raised her head and laughed softly. Is Snow White your daughter? What a great performance. There were parents in front and behind them who turned around to look at the warm appearance of the father and daughter. In particular, a white elder sister even gave a thumbs up and praised them. Of course, she spoke in English. Thank you, she is too shy. Poplar Fruit smiled and pointed to Kiki, who was hiding her face in his arms. Chapter 1149. April passed at a moderate pace, but ever since Poplar Fruit received a piece of news from teacher He, who had just finished filming the movie and was still staying in Yangqing City, he couldn't wait to make time pass faster. Only Poplar Fruit knew how difficult it was to keep a secret. He even held it in for a week before telling Fong Beibei, and then pulled Fong Beibei together to keep the secret. Finally, they waited for Kiki's birthday. This year, some of Kiki's kindergarten friends, who had a good relationship with Kiki, were invited to celebrate Kiki's 4th birthday. After the birthday began, the beautifully dressed Kiki was led downstairs by Fong Beibei. She happily greeted and hugged each of her friends and jumped up and down. But the little fellow soon found that there was a person in the room that she didn't know, who was carrying a big camera. She pulled Poplar Fruit's hand in confusion and asked, Papa, who is this uncle? Oh, this uncle. This uncle was invited by Papa to take a birthday video for Kiki. It can be a souvenir in the future. Poplar Fruit secretly wiped his cold sweat and lied without leaving a trace. Kiki completely believed her father's explanation. She turned her head and played with her friends again. After a while, when Kiki was dividing the cake, she carefully held a plate and walked to the cameraman uncle. She raised her head and said in a clear voice, Uncle, you also eat the cake. Poplar Fruit and the cameraman were stunned for a moment. The cameraman smiled and said, Kiki, thank you, but I still have to work. It's okay. Kiki smiled brightly and said, My papa can help you with the camera. Papa is very strong. Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He could only stand up and pay for his daughter. He took the camera from the cameraman's hand and smiled. It's fine, you can try it first. This little fellow hasn't even given me a piece yet. Yanggua's words sounded a little jealous. Kiki giggled and handed the cake to the photographer. She swung her ponytail and ran back to the children. Her behavior was also seen by the other children. They shouted loudly, Kiki, I'll give you mine too. At 8 o'clock, the noisy birthday party finally ended. Kiki sent off her friends who needed to go home early one by one. However, Kiki was not sad. Although she had opened many gifts from her friends, the biggest gift from her father and mother had not been opened yet. Poplar Fruit told Kiki that this was the surprise for the last, the biggest surprise. As for what the birthday gift was, Poplar Fruit did not reveal anything to Kiki before. Even Kiki secretly paid attention to her father and asked Gold to help search the whole house, but she did not find any clues. So Kiki could only wait for this to be the last. It was also because she was looking forward to it too much. After Kiki sent her friends away, she pestered her father for a gift. She did not notice that the cameraman who had been recording just now had not left. The gift will be taken out soon. But Kiki has to count to 100 in her mother's arms. Poplar Fruit said to Kiki with a smile. At the same time, he secretly gestured to the cameraman to make a phone call. You want me to count to 100? Chi-Chi's mouth slightly pouted. 100? Yes, count to 100, you have to count to 100. Otherwise, the gift will fly away. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Papa, you are fooling me. Kiki was not that stupid. I'm not fooling you. It's true. You have to count to 100, and you can't peek at it. Only then will the gift appear. Poplar Fruit said. Okay. In the end, the gift was more tempting. Kiki got into Fong Beibei's arms and began to count. 1, 2, 3. It was finally going to start. The other party had been preparing for a long time. Poplar Fruit had been waiting for 11 days. Finally, he was going to present this birthday surprise to Kiki. After waiting for a while, the cameraman's phone vibrated. Poplar Fruit opened the door and welcomed a person who had been waiting downstairs for several hours. However, at this time, they did not make any noise. They just held back their laughter and gestured to each other. Kiki was still counting. She had already counted to more than 50. It was rare for her to be so patient. Of course, Poplar Fruit would not let Kiki continue to count, because the purpose of counting had been achieved. Kiki, you don't have to count. Why don't you look at your gift? Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Really? Chi-Chi was overjoyed as she turned her head around. Her big eyes first searched for her father's voice, and then she was attracted by the corner of her eyes because there was a big card placed in front of her. Kiki leaned in Fong Bei's arms, looking at the card and the square-faced man behind it in a daze. She was so silly that she did not know what to say. The cameraman next to them professionally aimed the camera at their faces. "Kiki, happy birthday. Do you still remember me?" the square-faced man said with a smile. The lights in the room were very bright, and when his voice came out, Kiki immediately reacted. She covered her little mouth, looked at the man with a surprised expression, and then shouted in an unbelievable voice, You are the village chief. You are really the village chief?" "Yes. I am the village chief." Li Rui looked at Chi-Chi with a smile. Chi-Chi's cuteness was through the roof at this moment, and this was all natural and unadorned. "It's really the village chief. Papa, the village chief is here." Kiki jumped on the ground and called Poplar Fruit to let him see. Poplar Fruit stood there with a smile. Of course he knew. "Kiki, today the village chief was asked by your father to give you a gift. Don't you want to see it?" The village chief Li Rui reminded with a smile. "A gift for me?" Kiki finally came back to her senses. After she recovered her original reason, she became a little shy again. After all, it was the first time she saw the village chief in real life. She shrank in Fong Bei's arms and wanted to confirm it again. "Yes." The village chief Li Rui nodded and stretched out the card that was as big as a courier. Kiki, who had watched the first 2 seasons of Where Are We Going, Daddy?, recognized the card. After looking carefully, she immediately shouted, "A mission card." "Yes, this is a mission card for Kiki," the village chief Li Rui said with a smile. "Kiki, read it." Poplar Fruit had told him before that Kiki could read. Kiki looked forward to it. She took the mission card, opened it and read, "Dear Kiki, we invite you and your Papa Poplar Fruit to participate in the 3rd season of Where Are We Going, Daddy? As guests. Central, Kiki didn't recognize all the characters. Hopes to see you join us. Where are we going, Daddy? Do you like it? Kiki. This is the birthday gift that I and the crew of Where Are We Going, Daddy? Poplar Fruit walked over with a smile and picked her up. After reading it, Kiki still couldn't believe it. But looking at her father's serious face and the village chief Li Rui who suddenly appeared in their house, Kiki already understood that everything was real. The wish that she took off last year's birthday actually came true. Kiki was suddenly moved by her father, and everything in front of her eyes. Yes, Kiki likes it. Kiki's big eyes were rolling with gold beans. She nodded vigorously. She suddenly hugged her father's neck and laughed through her tears. She cheered loudly. Kiki wants to go with Papa. Where are we going, Daddy? Chapter 1150. The video recorded on Kiki's birthday was very eye-catching. After all, Kiki had made such a wish last year. After a year, her dream had finally come true. It would definitely win people's attention and praise. Mango TV and Poplar Fruit kept it a secret. Therefore, in the past few days of Kiki's birthday, fans had been bringing up the incident from half a year ago. Then hundreds of thousands of people gathered on Mango TV and Poplar Fruit's official Weibo to make an appeal. It was as if tens of thousands of people were willing. However, Mango TV didn't say anything. They also kept the video and prepared to make it into a trailer for publicity in June. Poplar Fruit couldn't say anything. He just made an ambiguous spoiler on his Weibo. This year, Kiki's birthday, Daddy gave her a super awesome present. Look, the little guy is smiling from ear to ear. Now you won't have any regrets, right? There was also a photo of Kiki smiling happily below, but Poplar Fruit didn't tell people what the present was. Moreover, from the analysis of Poplar Fruit's Weibo, it was more likely that he had given a present that Kiki liked very much. This way, Kiki would forget the regret of not fulfilling her wish last year. Of course, there were some smart netizens who deciphered the truth from Poplar Fruit's Weibo. Could it be that Poplar Fruit had fulfilled Kiki's wish? However, their views weren't accepted by the public. Indeed, it wasn't easy for a non-celebrity to participate in Where Are We Going, Dad? Although fans had been petitioning for Poplar Fruit to be a model like Zhang Liang, they weren't sure. Poplar Fruit himself had said that he had recorded, "Where are we going, Dad?" for fun. Moreover, the commotion this time was only caused by Poplar Fruit's own fans. It wasn't like last year, when it almost escalated to a national scale. However, with the passage of time, the guest list was gradually revealed. First, it was Liu Yi who was confirmed. Then the Olympic champion and professional boxing champion Zhou Shimin was also confirmed to be participating in "Where Are We Going, Dad?" Then it was revealed that Zhang Jin, Chen Jianbin, and other celebrities would be participating. The truth and falsehood in these revelations were hard to distinguish. It was impossible to say that Mango TV or a management company wasn't behind this. But to a certain extent, these revelations also satisfied the fans of the show, who had been longing for their father for the third season. If it weren't for these revelations that continued to attract the audience's attention, the audience might have gradually forgotten about the show due to the decline in attention. Even if the show managed to regain some of the audience's popularity, by relying on the excitement of the show, the premiere or the first few episodes of the show would definitely be greatly affected. This was an unacceptable failure for both the advertisers and Mango TV. There would be promotions, but before the official promotions, it wasn't a bad choice to rely on these rumors to gain popularity. No matter what, the audience and media had predicted a few real guests, but no one predicted the existence of Poplar Fruit and Kiki. Only Yang was fans weekly protested with a few grievances. What was Poplar Fruit doing in May? In the beginning of May, Poplar Fruit was sorting out the photos and videos of himself and Kiki from the past few years, and sending them to the program staff. Poplar Fruit did very well in this aspect. In terms of promotions, he only made the final judgment, whether it was okay or not. As for the specifics of how to promote and how to operate, it all depended on the opinions of the professionals. Of course, he still had his own academic and school tasks to attend to. Recently, Poplar Fruit had become restless again. Currently, the theory of word disassembly and translation was nearing perfection. All that needed to be done was to promote it. This was not something that Poplar Fruit needed to worry about. Therefore, Poplar Fruit began to ponder new research. Since the disassembling method could make it easier for foreigners whose mother tongue was not hieroglyphics to learn Chinese with hieroglyphics, was there a similar or opposite theory to the disassembling method that could make it easier for Chinese whose mother tongue was hieroglyphics to learn Western languages with letters as morphemes? The above was more complicated, but simply put, Poplar Fruit wanted to research a way to make it easier for Chinese people to learn foreign languages. Poplar Fruit believed that there was such a thing, and the key to this research was likely to be hidden in his word disassembly. No matter what, this was another difficult research project. Chen Zongdai felt that it was a little unbelievable after hearing Poplar Fruit's idea. However, Chen Zongdai would encourage Poplar Fruit to research it. After all, this kid often created miracles that no one could imagine. The only thing that made Chen Zongdai unhappy was that after Poplar Fruit proposed his idea, he took advantage of the old man's happiness to mention his participation in the show's recording schedule. Chen Zongdai could not do anything about Poplar Fruit. He knew that participating in the show was not Poplar Fruit's own wish. Poplar Fruit was only sacrificing himself for his daughter. However, this guy was too despicable. Every time he wanted to do some research, he would go and stir up some news. If he participated in "Where Are We Going, Dad?", Poplar Fruit would definitely become the subject of the media's coverage. Would it kill you to just focus on your studies and not be half-hearted? Even if Poplar Fruit could multitask, it would not be enough. Regardless, the old man still dispiritedly approved Poplar Fruit's schedule. On May 10th, Poplar Fruit also flew to Beijing to participate in the translation industry's academic conference. At the same time, he was listed as an assistant director of the China Translation Association. He also received a translation contribution award that no one had heard of before. On the 12th, Poplar Fruit was still in Beijing. He did not return to Guangzhou. The United Nations and China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs called Poplar Fruit for a meeting. Poplar Fruit also attended the meeting as a consultant. The topic of discussion was of course the recently popular long-distance education. After a few major member states of the United Nations and a few lower member states discussed together, They decided to work together as an official to promote this long-distance education assistance. Of course, everything was still in the budding stage. Poplar Fruit did not need to do anything. The negotiations between the major countries, capital allocation, profit sharing, would probably take a few more months. Then why did Poplar Fruit attend? Because Poplar Fruit was the founder of this education model, the father of XXX education. This title was not for nothing. Even if they treated Poplar Fruit as a mascot, it would be worth it. At the national level, Poplar Fruit did not have much choice. Let's not talk about these matters for the time being. It was already the middle of May. Finally, the guest list could no longer be concealed. The complete guest list was exposed under the intentional or unintentional leak of the Mango Station. Poplar Fruit and his daughter, Yang Luoqi, were on the list. Chapter 1151. The names look a little strange. It's mainly to avoid arousing suspicion. Everyone, please bear with it for a while. According to Mango Entertainment's Weibo, the list of Where's Daddy Go was finally confirmed to be Lu Yi and Lu Nuyi, Hu Jun and Hu Haokong, Lin Yongjian and Lin Dajuan, Zhou Ximing and Zhou Mingxian, and finally, Poplar Fruit and Yang Luoqi. It was already clear who was behind Mango Entertainment. Just by looking at the name, it was obvious. Therefore, the list of names that it revealed was most likely true. However, this list was too interesting. Other things aside, Lu Yi and Hu Jun, this pair of celebrities were amazing. Although Blue Universe, a same-sex-themed movie, which they starred in, was banned in the country and remained silent until now, it was still a blockbuster that won the Golden Horse Best Actor award after all. Moreover, their acting in it was still a hot topic for many people. No matter what, they were once a couple on the silver screen. This time they were acting in a reality TV show together. No matter how you looked at it, there was some blue charm. Hee. There was also the Poplar Fruit father and daughter. As long as the media people in the country were not greenhorns, they would definitely not be unfamiliar with Poplar Fruit's name. Just like how teacher Jing Yidan introduced Poplar Fruit in Touch China, it was very difficult to define Poplar Fruit's position. This was because when you thought that he was a leading figure in a certain industry, Poplar Fruit would immediately make jaw-dropping achievements in another industry. The domestic media had a lot of reports on Poplar Fruit, not to mention the series of domestic and international combo punches in February and March. Poplar Fruit had become a double superstar in the country and internationally. As long as it was news about Poplar Fruit, it would definitely attract a lot of media people. However, to the entertainment media, they hated Poplar Fruit's performance to the core. Of course, this kind of hatred came from the fact that he didn't fight for it. Everyone thought that Poplar Fruit had the looks, the figure, the fame, and even the opportunity. There were always people waving money to invite Poplar Fruit to appear on shows or act in movies or dramas. Later on, they found out that he was also skilled in martial arts, so no matter what, he would definitely become a big hit if he came to the entertainment industry. Others couldn't even become popular if they wanted to, but Poplar Fruit couldn't avoid it at all costs. How could such a waste of talent not make the entertainment reporters beat their chests and stamp their feet? Well, in fact, it was just their imagination. However, Poplar Fruit suddenly appeared on the guest list of the reality television show. This made them excited. Fuck. Poplar Fruit, such a fake saint, had finally gone to the sea for money? There was a reason for them to think so. After all, reality television shows had become more and more popular in recent years, and the appearance fees for the guests were also increasing. For example, some of the older generation celebrities who had retreated from the entertainment industry had been scouted. Even a superstar like Zhou Gongjiu had agreed to appear on China's Top Voice at a sky-high price. As long as the audience wanted to see it, who would be able to hold their ground? Mango TV must have spent a lot of money to invite Poplar Fruit. The media said confidently. Quite a number of people believed it, but more people, led by Poplar Fruit's fans, sneered. Bullshit, does our Poplar Fruit appa lack money? He donated more than 200 million in the past 2 to 3 years, and Mango TV spent more than 200 million? Even inviting Beckham doesn't need to spend so much money, right? Half a year had passed, and many media reporters had gradually forgotten about the petition that Poplar Fruit's fans had made for Poplar Fruit at the end of last year. However, this was no longer a secret, and it was quickly turned over. Only then did the reporters change their tone. It was changed to the statement that Poplar Fruit had gone to the sea for his daughter. With the reporters' brilliant writing, this simple story was exaggerated to the point that it was almost written as a touching story of Poplar Fruit selling his body just to make his daughter smile. None of them had lost their moral integrity. Regardless, once the name list was released, the clamoring media got excited as if they had been injected with chicken blood. They spread out and rushed to different parts of the country to interview these new celebrities. Many reporters came to Guangzhou, but they could not enter Poplar Fruit's neighborhood, so they went to Higashiyama University to look for him. Poplar Fruit could not be found, and Chen Zhongdai was stuck in front of the school building with a sullen expression. The reporters recognized him. He was the dean of the School of Foreign Languages and Poplar Fruit's mentor. Yes, he's going to participate in a TV show. We will support the students to have a rich and colorful life after school as long as it doesn't affect their studies. Chen Zhongdai also knew how to lie in a dignified manner. The show is only for a few days at a time. It won't affect his studies and work at school. Okay, I have to go to class. If you have any questions, you can ask Poplar Fruit directly. Wait for him to come back. Chen Zhongdai was finally able to escape when the school's security arrived. After escaping back to his office, Chen Zhongdai helplessly cursed, "That little bastard." Poplar Fruit was indeed not at school. Feng Beibei was also used to this and nimbly avoided the reporters' search. So the reporters who came up empty-handed began to feel depressed. Why couldn't they find him? In fact, after the list was declared to the customs, many reporters who went to interview the celebrities were left empty-handed. Fortunately, after all, the other guests had management companies. Even if they couldn't find the main characters, they could still get some news from their managers. Poplar Fruit was alone. He didn't have any manager or assistant. This was understandable, but the reporters expressed that they couldn't accept it. These questions were raised by the reporters, and then some fans ran to Poplar Fruit's Weibo to recommend themselves, saying that they were willing to be Poplar Fruit's manager and makeup artist for free. Originally, no one expected Poplar Fruit to reply, but the next day, Poplar Fruit actually sent a Weibo reply to these cute fans. Haha. Thank you everyone. But there's really no need. I'm just taking my daughter out for a trip. There's no need to make such a big fuss. Also, don't you want to see us on camera without makeup? Poplar Fruit also posted a photo of the father and daughter waiting at the airport to satisfy the fans and reporters' desire. The fans liked it and said proudly, "There's no need for makeup. Our appa is as handsome and beautiful as Princess Kiki." This was true. One had to know that except for the Bali Fashion Week show and participating in the Express book, Poplar Fruit had never put on makeup again. Kiki was even more so. Poplar Fruit couldn't accept those cosmetics hurting his daughter's delicate skin. Poplar Fruit's Weibo was posted by himself, but the photo was arranged by the program team. Poplar Fruit didn't have the brain for publicity. It was also because of this photo that the eyes of the media lit up. They wondered in their hearts, has the recording started? So, a lot of press releases were released, and even some confusing titles were hung on the homepage of the website. Dad, the third season has started recording. Insiders say that the premiere may be in July. Is this true? Chapter 1152. After changing Kiki into a beige dress, Poplar Fruit helped Kiki apply toothpaste and let her brush her teeth. Poplar Fruit made way for the cameraman to film Kiki. Then he explained to his assistant casually, previously, there was a drama party in the kindergarten, and she played Snow White in the class program. Wait a minute. The assistant interrupted Poplar Fruit with an apologetic look and called the cameraman over to face Poplar Fruit. Teacher Yang, look at the camera and say it again. Well, Poplar Fruit, a newcomer to variety shows, still didn't understand these details. But it didn't matter. Poplar Fruit began again, and this time, it was more concise. After all, his IQ wasn't low, and he had watched a lot of variety shows, so he knew that he couldn't be long-winded. What he wanted to say was why Kiki wanted her father to kiss her before she was willing to get up. It was mainly because of the after effects of playing Snow White. Kiki liked some of the scenes in the show, such as the prince waking the princess up with a kiss. So the little girl couldn't be stopped. If her father didn't kiss her, the little girl would stay in bed and refuse to get up. Even if Fong Beibei kissed her, she couldn't do it. It had to be her most dependent father. The material of this paragraph wasn't broadcasted, but it would be made into subtitles to help people understand. It would be broadcasted together with the clip of Poplar Fruit waking Kiki up. Most of the audience still didn't understand this joke. Only the many fans under Poplar Fruit's Weibo knew about Kiki's previous performance. Of course, the show would also use this gimmick for publicity. They just slightly edited the video provided by Poplar Fruit that night and uploaded it to Weibo. Suddenly, Kiki's popularity rose a lot. Don't say it. Kiki finished brushing her teeth and didn't wipe her mouth clean. She shyly ran over to cover her father's mouth and secretly glanced at the camera. You still need to wash your face. Go quickly. Poplar Fruit took Kiki's towel from his shoulder and sent Kiki to the bathroom. Let me show you something good. Poplar Fruit smiled mysteriously. Today he was also acting like a child. He winked at the camera, then went to the bedside table and picked up a beautiful bell. What is this? The assistant asked curiously. Take a picture of her later. Poplar Fruit pointed at Kiki, who was standing on a small stool in the bathroom and struggling to wipe her face with a towel. He didn't answer directly. Poplar Fruit smiled brightly. He shook the bell in his hand, and a clear sound came out. The cameraman quickly turned around and faced Kiki in the bathroom. The little girl put down the towel, jumped down from the small stool, and ran to her father with a happy smile. Poplar Fruit had already bent down and leaned over. Kiki kissed her father's face, then shyly ran away with her beautiful wet curly hair. It turned out that this was Poplar Fruit's precious bell. They had all agreed that as long as the bell rang, it meant, please come and kiss me. Then, whether it was Poplar Fruit, Kiki, or Fong Beibei, they would all have to put down what they were doing and kiss the person who held the bell. Of course, Kiki liked to play with it the most. During breakfast, Poplar Fruit's voracious appetite amazed the assistant and cameraman, but unfortunately, this scene would not be seen by the audience. In fact, the luggage had already been packed. Because the production crew was responsible for the food and accommodation, the 2 or 3 large suitcases were compressed into 1.5 by Poplar Fruit. The other half was a small suitcase stacked on top of the large suitcase. And the main suitcase was Kiki's clothes. They could leave after 8 o'clock, but the plane was at 11 o'clock, so they delayed a little. The production crew didn't expect Poplar Fruit to move so quickly. Mommy won't go. Kiki, say goodbye to Mommy. Poplar Fruit patted Kiki's little butt and stood up with a smile. It was time to leave. The assistant and cameraman had already packed their props and luggage. Goodbye, Mommy. Kiki obediently kissed Fong Beibei. Goodbye, Kiki. Have fun with Daddy. Fong Beibei laughed. While Kiki was saying goodbye to Goldie, Poplar Fruit walked up, took Fong Beibei's hand and kissed it. Compared to other fathers, Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei were more conservative. They were too embarrassed to be too intimate in front of outsiders. However, the gentleness in Poplar Fruit's voice could still be heard. He said, Baby, I'm leaving. Next time, I'll bring you on a trip. Be careful. Fong Beibei reluctantly hugged Poplar Fruit before letting go. After saying goodbye to Fong Beibei, Poplar Fruit and Kiki flew to Nanhu Province with the production crew. The same story also happened in Beijing and Guishan. The audience followed the production crew's camera and went deeper into the family lives of these big stars. This opportunity was rare because the biggest difference between the 3rd season and the first 2 seasons was that the production schedule was much tighter. In the past, every episode would have a scene of the children setting off. In the 3rd season, only the first episode was left. Of course, from this episode, the audience could also understand what kind of children the guests of this season were. It had to be said that this time, the production crew really put in a lot of effort to figure out the candidates for the guests. Not to mention the adults, the 5 little protagonists each had a distinct personality. Nuoi was sensible and down-to-earth. Lin Dajuan was kind and stubborn. Kong Kong was cold and heartwarming, Xian Xian was honest and persistent, and Kiki had the appearance of a princess and the heart of an angel. Finally, no one would have expected her to be a mischievous fairy. Every child had captured the hearts of the audience from the beginning. As the show progressed, they were deeply loved by the audience of all ages and firmly held onto the show's ratings. When the first episode was broadcast, the show's ratings had already reached 28%. Although it could not compare to the ratings of the first episode of the second season. As long as it did not start high and end low like the second season, it was undoubtedly a success for the show. Don't think that 28% was a small number. One had to know that when the third season was broadcast, it was facing the end of the second season of The Running Man, and the even more popular fourth season of China's Top Voice was about to be broadcast. In terms of attention, it was far inferior to the second season of Where Are We Going, Dad? Moreover, in recent years, the development of online videos had faintly surpassed that of television. We can't ignore the impact of online videos that were only a few hours later than the television premiere on television. 28% was a good start, and it made us believe that the future would be better. However, it didn't. The ratings of the third season actually started high and ended low. The impact of China's Top Voice was too severe. However, it could be seen that the ratings had indeed stabilized later on. In the novel, the addition of Kiki would not have much impact on the ratings. Perhaps it would only increase by a few tenths of a percent. But so what? The audience that we like will continue to like it, right? Chapter 1153. Due to the short distance and early arrival, Poplar Fruit was able to let Kiki take a nap at the hotel arranged by Mango Station. When they rushed to Mango Station to meet with the other parents, it was already past 2 in the afternoon. Among the 5 parents, 3 of the actor fathers were more familiar with each other. Lu Yi and Hu Jun aside. Even if Lin Yongjian was not familiar with them, he still knew them. After all, they were all in the mainland Chinese actor circle and lived in Beijing. However, this did not mean that they would reject Poplar Fruit and Zhou Shimin. Under the enthusiasm, everyone chatted and became familiar with each other. Especially the president of Huahua Society, Lu Yi. He was particularly lively as he asked who was better between Poplar Fruit and Zhou Shimin. Lu Yi had done his homework and the question he asked was indeed interesting. After all, Poplar Fruit had single-handedly fought 8 armed thugs in the video and killed them. Zhou Shimin was an Olympic champion and a professional boxing champion. Although he was much shorter than Poplar Fruit, his skills were not to be underestimated. Brother Zhou is better. Of course Poplar Fruit is better. As expected, the 2 fathers chose to be humble. They looked at each other and laughed. In fact, in terms of boxing skills, Poplar Fruit was not as good as Zhou Shimin. However, in terms of skills, Poplar Fruit was definitely better, or much better. After all, even professional boxing, not to mention the black market boxing, was based on the rules and would not put one's life on the line. Zhou Shimin had learned martial arts before, but that was only the tip of the iceberg. He had not seen real internal martial arts. Even if Meng Sanhua came to fight him, Meng Sanhua could easily defeat him at the cost of minor injuries, let alone Poplar Fruit who was far inferior to Meng Sanhua. Of course, in Zhou Shimin's heart, he was still better than Poplar Fruit. After all, he was also a 3-time Olympic champion, and was now a professional boxing champion. He deserved such pride in his heart. However, what was the point of fighting over this? He and Poplar Fruit were participating in a parent-child program, not a boxing championship. The children also had their first interaction under the guidance of the adults. Children's friendship sprouted more easily than adults. While Poplar Fruit and the others were still chatting, the children had already started chatting. Let me tell you the story of Sun Wukong. Nuai was a little tongue-tied, but his father's northeastern accent was very pleasant to the ears. Good. Kiki clapped her hands, beaming with joy. Of course, our cold and domineering CEO Kong Kong was watching from the side. He was older than all 4 of his friends. He was introverted and a little shy, so he couldn't speak freely with his younger siblings. If he wanted to blend in, he would have to rely on his own initiative. It was already late today, and it was not yet time to officially start the 3 days and 2 nights journey. As they gathered at the station, the program team not only allowed them to get to know each other, but there was also a small but meticulously designed program waiting for them. Before that, each father went to a small stage in the building to do a simple interview. There was only one question. Do you have any experience in bringing your child out for a trip? Hu Jun's expression was always the same, cool. But when faced with this question, he even looked a little worried. I've never taken him out alone. Without his mother by my side, I think I'll go crazy easily. I'll be in a mess. His hands were already going crazy as he continued. I feel a little anxious. Sometimes, before I can even annoy him, he will annoy me first. He will leave first. It seemed like there were many problems between father and son. Lu Yi was interesting. Even if the president of Huahua Society answered the question seriously, it would give people a feeling that he was not serious. He trembled a little, as if he was really worried. No, this is the first time. This is the first time this big girl has been on a sedan chair. There wasn't much time for this, nor was there much real interaction. This point was reflected in the later segment. Lin Yongjian's answer was very serious. It could be seen that teacher Lin was really putting an effort to think about the problem of getting along with his son. He said in a low voice, there really wasn't. Out of the 365 days in a year, I was at the filming location for 350 days. Similarly, there was nothing. Zhou Shimin's answer was very emotional. When they Xian still has a younger brother, first called for their father, the first time they raised their heads, the first time they crawled and the first time they walked, I was basically not by their side. Most of the dad's answers were no. Even if it was no at all, that was not necessarily the case. However, it could be confirmed that these celebrities were busy people. They did not have much time to spend with their children. According to the program's needs, it was not hard to say that they did not have much time. However, Poplar Fruit's answer was different. He did not want to lie, nor did he lie. His fans knew it very well. In the past year, after Kiki went to kindergarten, we did not go out together much. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, but in the first 3 years, to be honest, we were really inseparable. Especially before she was 2 years old. She was so clingy, don't mention it. Poplar Fruit did not say that at the most serious time. When Kiki was just born, she could not leave her father's side. Poplar Fruit even quit his promising job because of this. However, Poplar Fruit had now gently let go of that difficult past. All he saw was the happy life now. I brought her with me when I came to Beijing for press conferences, when I went traveling, when I attended academic conferences, and even when I went to Bali. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. I was her support, and she was my happy fruit, the source of my energy. Whenever I was tired from work, all my worries and tiredness would be swept away when I saw her. Well, I still spend a lot of time with her now, because I think that our family is more important than anything else. From this answer, it could be seen that Poplar Fruit was the most special of the 5 fathers. But thinking about it, Poplar Fruit was the youngest. Even Zhou Shimin was 7 years older than Poplar Fruit. Needless to say, Hu Jun was a generation older than Poplar Fruit, a full 20 years. Poplar Fruit was the only single father. When Kiki was born, she was raised by Poplar Fruit alone. The love that Poplar Fruit poured into Kiki was not only double, but also beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Watching Poplar Fruit say such a sentence, the program actually played it in its entirety, accompanied by some sensational photos, the ones of Kiki's childhood. The audience felt as if they had experienced it themselves at that moment. Although Poplar Fruit said it with a smile and ease, the audience could understand that it was not easy. The audience's curiosity was completely aroused by the program. They could not wait to know how our lovely Kiki would behave under the care of such a warm father. Chapter 1154. Before the start of the first trip, the fathers and the children had to go through a special test. Before Poplar Fruit and the others arrived, Mango TV had already built 5 rooms in the studio. They were of different styles, but they all had one thing in common. There were many paintings hanging on the walls. In fact, the paintings were all a cover, because there were many hidden cameras behind them. Poplar Fruit held Kiki's hand and came to this floor with the other fathers and children. Later, the fathers and children will be interviewed separately, the assistant director said. But before the interview, you have to wait in your own rooms. We will come back and inform you to be interviewed. The interview was fake, but the waiting was real. The production team had designed such a secret room, where only the fathers and children could be alone. They had to stay in there for a boring hour. During this hour, they had no choice but to wait, because the production team locked the door as soon as they walked in. Poplar Fruit and Kiki went in. Just as they sat down, they heard the door lock click. His ears were still quite sensitive. He didn't need to go to confirm what had happened outside. Poplar Fruit's lips curled up slightly. He remembered that the production team had asked them to go to the bathroom. No wonder the requirements were so strange. It seemed that they were going to lock him and Kiki up for a while. She vaguely understood the program team's thoughts for this segment. It was already so obvious, so Yongguo felt more at ease. Come sit with Dad for a while. Poplar Fruit smiled and waved to Kiki. He said, "This chair is quite comfortable." After the little girl got up in the afternoon, she changed into a long dress made of more comfortable material. It was warm pink, which made her skin look particularly white. There was a Hello Kitty print on the front, which made her look playful and cute. Not only that, she also wore a princess crown. Of course, it was not an expensive crystal crown, but a very cheap plastic product. It looked better with gold foil. As long as she was as beautiful as a little princess, there was no need to be as luxurious as a real princess. Poplar Fruit did not want his daughter to be infected with princess syndrome. "Papa, this room looks like our home," Kiki said to Poplar Fruit as she sat down beside her father. "Well, it's very foreign, isn't it?" Poplar Fruit patted the chair and said with a smile, "This chair is very similar to the one we saw in Sister Luo Danny's house when we went to Bali." I remember. This is also a princess's chair." Kiki giggled as she pulled her father's hand. There was a joke here that the audience might not know. Kiki and Luo Danny watched Frozen together 2 years ago. In the end, one claimed to be Princess Elsa, while the other claimed to be Princess Anna. Of course, Kiki preferred Princess Elsa, who knew magic, although Luo Danny was much older than her. Originally, Kiki was still a little restrained when she first came in, but as time passed, Kiki completely relaxed. After all, there were no strangers in this room. So what if it was a secret room? In Kiki's mind, as long as her father was there, she had the whole world. "Papa, I want to listen to a story." Kiki leaned on her father's arm and moved her slender legs like a swing. Storytelling was Poplar Fruit's old profession. Every day when Kiki slept, she would listen to Poplar Fruit telling stories. Only when Poplar Fruit was not at home, Fong Beibei would read to her. Although there was no drawing book in hand, with the stock of fairy tales in Poplar Fruit's mind, he would not run out of fairy tales even if he told them for 3 days and 3 nights. "Then Papa will tell you the story of 3 little elephants," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. No, I want to listen to Princess Elsa's story today." Kiki shook her hand. The memory just now made Kiki begin to miss the kind and magical Princess Elsa. "Well, then let's tell the story of Princess Elsa and Snowbow's adventure in the forest," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. This was a story he made up on the spot. Although it was made up on the spot, Poplar Fruit's memory was too large. He could make up a story on the spot, and the plot was attractive. Unconsciously, the little fellow was enraptured by the story. After the story ended, she couldn't resist the urge to perform in her heart, and jumped down from the chair. "Papa, you are the Bigfoot monster. I am Princess Elsa." Kiki pulled Poplar Fruit's hand and waved it. "The Bigfoot monster is very bad. It took Snowbow away." "Yes. Then Princess Elsa, are you here to defeat me and save Snowbow?" Poplar Fruit held back his laughter, and asked while gesturing with his hands. Kiki, who was smiling as beautifully as a flower, nodded her head. Just like Princess Elsa in the movie, she swayed her skirt. Then her hands seemed to gather magical elements in the air, and waved it out. "What is this? It's so powerful." Poplar Fruit made an appearance of resisting with all his might. Kiki, this is Ice Snow Arrow. I can shoot out a lot of them at once." Kiki's little hands intertwined as she explained with a smile. She had a lot of fun playing with her father. "Let me out." Suddenly, a roar came from outside the room. Word by word, it vented the annoyance in the owner's heart. Poplar Fruit could tell that it was Hujun's son Kong Kong. He didn't expect that Kong Kong, who was the oldest, would be the first to become impatient. But thinking about it, brother Hujun was such a quiet person, and Kong Kong already had his own consciousness. It would be strange if he could stay in the same room with his father peacefully. However, Kong Kong's cry scared Kiki, who was immersed in the world of magical princesses. The little girl was stunned at first, and subconsciously turned her head to look for the source of the sound. Then Kong Kong's cry became louder and louder, and she ran to her father's side in fear. Only when she grabbed her father's hand and felt her father's warmth, did Kiki feel a little relieved. "It's okay, that's your brother Kong Kong." Poplar Fruit comforted her with a smile. "Why is brother Kong Kong shouting?" Kiki asked in confusion. "Because brother Kong Kong doesn't like to be locked up," Poplar Fruit said. "Why don't I like it? Kiki thinks it's very fun." Kiki giggled as she looked up at her father. "You think it's very fun?" Poplar Fruit asked in surprise. "Really? It's true, it's true. I'm very happy to play with Dad." Kiki nodded her little head, smiled sweetly and said, "Just like when I was young." Poplar Fruit suddenly remembered that he hadn't been doing well recently. It wasn't that he didn't spend time with Kiki, but it was very rare for him to sit alone and chat with Kiki like this. After all, now that Kiki had to go to kindergarten during the day, and at night, there was the disturbance of gold and other toys at home, it was very rare for Kiki to talk so happily with Poplar Fruit like this. Poplar Fruit actually began to enjoy the quiet and undisturbed environment that the program group created for them. Chapter 1155. In the secret room, every father behaved differently. Only a few dads treated their children as warmly as Poplar Fruit. Zhou Shimin was in a better situation. He didn't have the tenderness of an Iron Man, but he got along well with his son. They were like good brothers. Lin Yongjian was a very introspective person, but he had a son at an old age. The age gap between him and his son was too big. Not to mention the generation gap, his traditional child-rearing thinking made Dejun somewhat resistant. Although things were peaceful for a while, Dejun woke up too early in the morning. He was so excited that he didn't rest at noon. So he chatted in the room for half an hour, and wanted to sleep. Lin Yongjian felt sorry for his son and said, "Then you sleep first." "Is it too bright, this place?" Lin Yongjian asked. "Yes, it's too bright for my eyes." Dejun turned over. Lin Yongjian found a black cloth and made a blindfold for Dejun. Then he sat beside him and watched him fall asleep. Although Teacher Lin's way of treating children was very traditional, and was even questioned by many netizens, it was undeniable that he was also a father who loved his son. Perhaps he didn't know how to express his love, but seeing him sitting silently beside his son, he wanted to communicate with his son, but he still let him rest for a while. Even after the door was opened, he still felt a little sad. This scene made many fathers who could empathize with him, and the netizens who understood him sigh and feel sad. The camera panned to Hujun's side. Hujun and Kong Kong's relationship was because of their cold personalities, so it was difficult for them to talk together, so Kong Kong quickly became impatient. The screaming that scared Chi-Chi just now was the best example of this. Hujun thought of a way, which was to play a detective game with his son, and find clues to solve the secret room to distract himself from his frustration. He didn't expect that they would really find it. Behind the picture frame, there was actually a big hole that hid the camera. Once there was a hole, it could be drilled out. So, Kong Kong ran out and opened the door for his father. Perhaps this anxious mood affected all the children as well. The little glutton Xian Xian began to worry about his dinner. Chi-Chi ran over to the door and tried to push it open, but the big wooden door didn't budge. Poplar Fruit saw that his daughter was a little anxious. He smiled and said, "You should use your magic to open the door." Kiki's eyes lit up. She waved her slender and fair arms in the air and suddenly waved towards the door, as if a little fairy was casting a spell. In fact, the little girl understood that her father was just trying to make her happy, but she liked playing with her imagination. After casting the spell, Kiki pushed the door, but it still didn't budge. No way. Kiki turned around, spread out her hands, and giggled. Poplar Fruit also stood up and performed his spell towards the door. Seeing her father's handsome casting movements, Kiki's attention was no longer on the prison door. She happily ran back to play with her father. "Papa, do you think I'm beautiful today?" The magical girl was addicted to magic and began to show off her beauty again. She was also like this at home. Maybe it had been a long time since she saw other people. Kiki was completely relaxed. She twirled her skirt and stood like a little lady. "Very beautiful. You're as beautiful as a picture." Yanghua smiled. His left and right hand's index fingers and thumbs faced each other to form a rectangular frame. It was just like how we used to take virtual photos of others when we were young. His mouth made clicking sounds. "I know a picture. Papa, Chi-Chi knows a very, very famous pictorial. That beautiful elder sister looks like this." Chi-Chi pressed her stomach and lowered her body. She even raised her buttocks. "What kind of posture was this?" Poplar Fruit laughed. "Oh, you're too exaggerated." No, no, no. "Well, I think the foreign sister in the picture is very beautiful," Kiki said. She changed her posture again. Although the little fellow was under Yanggua's protection and wasn't affected by commercial activities, such as shooting advertisements, she was still able to imitate the posture of those beautiful sisters on TV. And when she went to Bali with her father, she was able to imitate the posture of those beautiful sisters who were shooting posters. Oh, Poplar Fruit remembered. It turned out that Kiki's action of holding her belly was from the super classic picture of the goddess Monroe. Well, no matter what Monroe was, Poplar Fruit and Kiki had a lot of fun shooting pictures. Later, because of Kiki's amazing performance, many domestic children's clothing brands wanted to invite Kiki to shoot advertisements. Some rich people even offered a high price of several million yuan. Of course, Poplar Fruit rejected all of them. Poplar Fruit did not care what path Kiki chose when she grew up. But now was an important period for Kiki's growth. Poplar Fruit did not want his daughter to be busy with commercial activities. While they were having fun, on the other side, the pitiful Nuai and Luyi were sitting in boredom. Why were the two of them pitiful? Nuai was pitiful because his father was unreliable. He was almost 40 years old, but he was still like a child who had not grown up. The president of Fire Glory Society did not care about his son's coquettishness and pestering. He only cared about playing with his phone. This scene made many netizens unable to help but ridicule him. But he was such a father. When Nuai played with the battery and even put it in his mouth, he only sternly reprimanded him. Then there was no then. Luyi was pitiful because of Nuai. He was not like other children who would cry to attract their father's attention. On the contrary, it might be because of Luyi that Nuai's character was more tenacious since young. Then he would nag and pester his father to talk. It was unknown where he got so much energy from. One moment he talked about the battery, the next he imagined a pack of wolves. He would nag and nag nonstop. However, Luyi did not raise his spirits to look at him. Luyi felt like there were 1,000 flies buzzing around his ears. He wished he could use his eyes to shoot out lasers to burn them all. In fact, the program team had added special effects for him. This scene made people feel both helpless and amused. Finally, Luyi could not hold back his temper. Nuai's nagging made him forget the program team's instructions. He stood up and tried to break the door open himself. Of course, he was not completely unreliable. In front of his son, he still tried to explain his actions to Nuai. He was worried that his son would be frightened. With a pung sound, Luyi stood awkwardly in front of the door. His kick was not strong enough. It did not open. It did not open. This time, he had lost face. He even lost face in front of his son. "You are the most beautiful cloud in my sky." Luckily, the adorable Nuai did not mock him. He looked at him suspiciously for a long time and then asked in a muffled voice, "It didn't open? How could it not open?" Luyi, who did not believe in heresy, tried again. This time he finally kicked the door open. Ah. Nuai had completely become his father's fan. This kind of power made him smile from ear to ear. He jumped down and gave his father a high five. He said cheerfully, "I can finally go out." Nuo Yi's silly smile, although he wasn't silly, unexpectedly captured the hearts of many older sisters and aunties. From then on, the third season of Daddy gave birth to a silly, sweet, and warm little boy who was loved by everyone and whose flowers bloomed when they saw him. Chapter 1156. Perhaps the production team did not expect such a situation to happen when they were designing the secret room test program. One climbed out of the hole, while the other broke out of the door. It could be said that the father and son pair had successfully destroyed the setup of this segment. Who would not cooperate and stay in the room to test the relationship between father and son, and then run out without waiting for the hour to end? Of course, in terms of results, this segment was still a success. After all, whether it was indifference or intimacy, the relationship between the five-star dads and the cute kids was still evaluated in this segment. The audience could see for themselves. In the future, as the program continued to be recorded, whether or not these relationships would change, and what kind of changes there would be a clear contrast because of this segment. Of course, there was still a small twist at the end. Another father and son pair did not play by the rules. The staff expressed that they were full of tears. This time it was Poplar Fruit and Kiki. After the door opened, Kiki was the first to run to the door. Seeing the uncles at the door looking at the cameras, she shyly leaned against the door frame. Poplar Fruit walked over. Kiki suddenly pulled the door and giggled. "Let's close the door." Poplar Fruit looked at the little rascal with some doubt. He was still preparing to leave with Kiki. "There's no need to open the door. We can continue chatting." Kiki looked up at her father and smiled sweetly. "Is that so?" Poplar Fruit's mood suddenly became very happy. He smiled and asked, "Do you want to continue chatting in the room?" This happiness came out of nowhere. Perhaps it was because the feeling of being needed by his daughter was very good. "Yes, let's not go out." Kiki tiptoed and moved forward with her hands behind her back as if she was dancing. "All right." Poplar Fruit stretched out his long hands and held the door to prevent Kiki from clipping it. He let his daughter go in first before closing the door. He even had a blissful smile on his face as he said to the cameraman outside the door, "Bye-bye." Kiki had already gone in. She squeezed beside her father's legs and mischievously waved outside. She sweetly said, "Bye-bye." Poplar Fruit and Kiki were really special. Other people were desperately trying to leave, but they were full of joy and wanted to stay and continue to enjoy the happiness of being alone with their father and daughter. Actually, after the segment, there was really an interview. The production team did not lie to children. First, the fathers were interviewed individually one by one. The question was very simple. It was a question of reflection. Talk about your feelings in this segment. Poplar Fruit didn't know how the other fathers felt. Although they would talk about it later, he was very happy. Therefore, when he answered the question, Poplar Fruit's face was still full of smiles. Before the door opened, the village elder said on the radio that we had been inside for an hour. At that time I thought, really? Was it really that long? Poplar Fruit looked at the camera, the assistant director behind it, and said with a smile, "There are not many opportunities to chat with my daughter happily and quietly. Really, I think the time passed very quickly. More importantly, Chi-Chi likes it too. Although this reaction is within my expectations, I'm still very touched." The interview with the children was to ask them to rate their respective fathers. The one who asked Kiki was the assistant sister who came to pick her up today. She thought it was too old to call her auntie. During the journey, although they were not familiar with each other, their relationship was getting better and better. When Kiki faced her, she was not as shy as she was at the beginning. "My papa has a lot of points. 100 million points. The little girl couldn't sit still and twisted in front of the camera, gesturing with one finger. "What if the highest score is only 100 points? How many points do you give your father?" the assistant sister asked. 100 points, Kiki said without hesitation. "Wow, you gave him such a high score?" Under the assistant sister's praise, Kiki giggled. Then the assistant sister asked again, "Why is that? Is it because you like your father very much?" This time, the little fellow did not answer. Perhaps it was because she felt that her love for her father could not be told to others, or perhaps it was because she had not played enough just now. Her mouth mumbled a bunch of nonsense, and then she performed her magic. She asked mischievously, "Do you know what I'm talking about?" Kiki's cute and beautiful appearance and strange behavior made many people fall in love with her at first sight. Later, Poplar Fruit watched TV and saw Kiki's chanting. He raised both hands and feet to guarantee that although the little girl knew a lot of foreign languages, this time she was definitely chanting for fun. Poplar Fruit did not understand anything. Since they arrived a day early, they spent the night in the hotel in Nanhu Province. After dinner and taking a shower, Poplar Fruit coaxed Kiki to sleep early. After all, they still had to go overseas tomorrow to start a 3-day and 2-night-long shooting schedule. The more it was like this, the more Kiki needed to rest. Of course, the adults' work and rest were much later. They had agreed during dinner. The 5 fathers came out of their rooms one after another, and went to the corridor of the hotel to sit and chat in the lounge on this floor. The main purpose was to improve their relationship. After all, most of them had just met today. "Teacher Lin, why did you only come out now?" Lu Yi asked with a smile. Lin Yongjian was indeed the last to come out, and he looked a little depressed. "Sigh, it's a long story." Lin Yongjian sighed and shook his head. However, he could not help but say, "Actually, when the door opened and the broadcast said, 'Welcome to Where Daddy Goes,' I almost cried." Everyone was stunned and did not say anything as they listened to him explain. "When Dejun was with me, he was not as lively as at home. In the end, he was sleeping in the room. I'm a little worried that I made a mistake in accepting this invitation." From Lin Yongjian's nagging, Poplar Fruit and the others realized that when it came to love children, Teacher Lin was no worse than anyone else. At that moment, he was not thinking about anything else. He was worried that Dejun would not perform well on the show, and would be criticized by the audience. Although Dejun was still young as a father, he knew that his son still cared about what others thought of him. "Sai, at least Dejun stayed in the room with you. Kong, did not want to stay for even a moment," Hu Jun said with a smile. He wanted to change the topic. After all, Teacher Lin's words were impulsive. Sometimes, you can really feel the disdain in his eyes. In comparison, Teacher Lin, I don't know how many times my heart has been sliced. After all, Hu Jun's heart was more tenacious. Lu Yi was more careless. He smiled and said, "Teacher Lin, I suggest that you ask Yanghua for advice." He was with his daughter and couldn't bear to leave. Although Lin Yongjian looked over, Poplar Fruit understood that they had just met. Furthermore, Teacher Lin was much older than him. If he wanted to teach him, it would not be his turn to teach him. Perhaps in the future, they would really become good friends because of the show. Then it could be discussed, but not now. Poplar Fruit smiled and said to Lin Yongjian, "Teacher Lin, you don't have to worry. You should be able to tell from the first 2 seasons that many children did not show it at the beginning. However, as they slowly got used to the show and gradually deepened their relationship with their father through the activities, they would become more lively and would be more willing to participate. This requires a process." "I understand." Lin Yongjian readily agreed and nodded. Chapter 1157. The crew of Where Are We Going, Dad?, along with the 5 pairs of star dads and cute children, took a plane to Xishan Province's Yulin City early in the morning. Here, they would begin the first journey of the 3rd season of Where Are We Going, Dad? Of course, paper cannot hide fire. This large group of people majestically appeared at the airport. Even though they were already very low-key, there were still tourists and locals who discovered them. Then, the news quickly spread on the internet. This also confirmed the guest list that the media on the internet were fighting to report. Through the photos that were circulating on Weibo, the media also had more places to speculate about the program. But no matter how the media discussed it, the performance of each child still needed to be shown later on in the program. Of course, it was not to say that in this program, the adult's performance was not eye-catching. With the performance of a stargazer, he had repeatedly snatched away the attention of others. That was the president of Huahua Society, Lu Yi. This guy was like a little princess who never grew up. Not to mention that he was unreliable, his playful heart was even more serious than his son's. Some viewers joked that Lu Yi was actually the sixth child in the third season. This was not an exaggeration at all. In comparison, Poplar Fruit was much more well-behaved. At best, he played the role of a bodyguard and nanny who accompanied the prince to study. No, to accompany the princess on a tour. After getting off the plane, there was still a few hours of driving to reach the village where the final filming would take place. Along the way, Poplar Fruit was not only not worried about his daughter's popularity, he even tried to coax his daughter to sleep. They woke up too early in the morning and she did not sleep on the plane. "I'm not sleepy." Kiki waved her hand and said happily, "Daddy, when I think about where Daddy is going today, I can't sleep at all." "All right then. Let's sleep for a while at noon." Poplar Fruit nodded helplessly. He began to chat with Kiki. "Now, do you recognize your brothers?" Poplar Fruit asked. No, they are all brothers." Kiki was actually quite sensitive to the issue of age. She corrected him seriously. "Brother Xianxian is younger than me." "Yes, it's 2 months younger." Poplar Fruit chuckled. In fact, he knew why. Other than being more dependent on her father, the little girl was more willing to be an elder sister than a younger sister when she was with other children. Previously, Little Seven was an example. Kiki really liked to play with her because Little Seven would always run over and call her sister. Poplar Fruit was puzzled by Kiki's sister complex. "Didn't I inherit it from you? You're also a sis-con." Song Jiwen had once exposed the truth, but Poplar Fruit refused to admit it. Little brother Xuanxuan's hair is curly. It's a bit like grandma's hair. "Papa, do you think Xuanxuan's hair has been permed? I've never seen a kid with curly hair in kindergarten," Kiki asked curiously. "I don't think so. It should be naturally curly." Poplar Fruit scratched his head. He had never paid attention to this problem because he thought that such a young child would not have permed his hair. In fact, Poplar Fruit's guess was wrong. Xuanxuan's hair was really permed. He used to have straight hair. It was only recently that he went on the show and spent more than 6 hours in the salon to get this kind of hairstyle that looked like instant noodles. More importantly, after spending so much time, Xianxian did not cry or make a fuss. He liked it very much. He was really a fashionable little boy. "Do you like brother Xianxian?" Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. Kiki had mentioned Xianxian many times in the car today. "I like him. Brother Xianxian is super cute." Kiki giggled. "And brother Nuyi, he talks very funny." "That's not a younger brother, Nuyi is an older brother." Poplar Fruit laughed. "Papa was right this time. Brother Nuyi is more than half a year older than you." "Is that so? But I don't think brother Nuyi is tall." Kiki pursed her lips and thought for a while. "He's only a little taller than brother Kong Kong." "That's because boys only grow taller when they're 8 or 9 years old. Kiki is a girl, so it's normal for her to grow taller," Poplar Fruit said. "Oh right, Kiki, when you go to the recording area, you have to talk to brother Dajuan more often," Poplar Fruit finally said to his daughter. "Brother Dajuan? But brother Dajuan doesn't talk to Kiki much." Kiki pouted. "That's because brother Dajuan is shy." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "He actually wants to play with you guys, Kiki, but he's too shy, so he doesn't talk much. If you talk to him more, he'll be more willing to play with you guys." Kiki suddenly understood. She nodded vigorously and said, "I understand. It's just like Sister Huasu in kindergarten." Sister Huasu was also shy at first, but after Kiki introduced her to other children, Sister Huasu started to play with us. That example was a little different. Kiki's kindergarten was an international school. Little Huasu was a Chinese girl like Kiki, but she didn't speak a foreign language like Kiki, so she was slower to integrate. However, for Kiki, the logic was the same. Poplar Fruit nodded and said, "That's right. Kiki, you have to be the bridge." At this time, a little bug flew into the car. To be exact, it was a little beetle. It usually hid in the bushes and flowers. Poplar Fruit, who was born in the countryside, recognized it. He also knew that if he killed it with his hands, there would be an unpleasant smell on his hands. The plot of the beetle was the original version. Xiao Han said that this plot was a little strange. Why would a little beetle fly into the car? On the hot and dusty Lus Plateau, Would the car open the window and drive? Anyway, this plot was good. After all, it led to the prologue of the first trip in the third season, and the advertisement. Hey. The little beetle flew in, circled twice, and landed on Kiki's fluffy princess dress. Kiki cried. Poplar Fruit thought that his daughter was scared. He smiled and said, "It's okay. Don't be afraid. Dad will take it away for you now." Poplar Fruit's eyes were sharp and his hands were fast. Before he finished speaking, the little beetle kicked its legs desperately between his two fingers. "Papa, don't pinch the little bug." Who knew that Kiki's cry was not because she was scared. Instead, she anxiously called her father. Poplar Fruit looked at her in confusion. "Papa, if you hold it like this, the little bug will hurt." Kiki looked at Poplar Fruit's hand with distressed eyes. Ordinary girls would be afraid of little bugs. Unexpectedly, Kiki was not afraid at all. Instead, she was quite protective of the fairer sex. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and had to put it in his palm. Then he handed it to Kiki and asked with a smile, "Well, Papa won't pinch it. Kiki, do you want to see it?" Okay. Kiki happily came over, and was about to reach out and touch the little beetle. However, the little beetle had been scared. As soon as it had a chance, it immediately flew up and flew through the open window to the Lust Plateau. It flew away, Kiki said with some regret. However, she did not have much regret, because the car was about to reach their destination. Chapter 1158. Papa, what are these big bamboo poles for? Kiki leaned against the car window, and curiously looked at the grassy pits on the plateau road that looked like a chessboard, and the bamboo poles in her mouth. Poplar Fruit looked around and smiled. How are these bamboo poles? These are saplings that the farmers here planted on the mountain. Do they still need to plant trees? Kiki had only seen tall and big trees, especially the thick trees in the virgin forests of Guishan province. She had never seen saplings that didn't even have leaves. Yes, the soil erosion on the plateau here is serious. The farmers want to protect the ecological balance. Poplar Fruit paused and changed to a simpler explanation to Kiki. In order to let Kiki have shade, they have to plant trees. In a few years, the saplings will grow into the big trees near our house. There may also be many that will wither before they grow up, but Poplar Fruit didn't explain this to Kiki. The car had already stopped by the side. Poplar Fruit unfastened Kiki's seatbelt and took her from the safety seat and said, "We're here, let's get out of the car. Take the luggage." Kiki looked back and jumped out of the car with her father's help. She was still thinking about her things, and was afraid that she would leave them in the car. "No need to take the luggage, it will be sent over later," the program staff said. He pointed to the 3 pairs of father and son who had arrived a few seconds earlier, but were already climbing up. "Let's go up first, there's a welcoming ceremony." Poplar Fruit and Kiki were not in a hurry, because behind them, Zhou Shimin and his son's car had also stopped and they were waiting for their friends to go together. "Papa, the color of this mountain looks like my dress." After standing with her father for a while, Kiki discovered a new continent and happily shared it with her father. Poplar Fruit lowered his head and smiled. "Yes, but I think your dress is more beautiful. Although it's yellow, it's as bright as the sun." "I think so too, haha." Kiki laughed happily. Kiki was wearing a beautiful bright yellow princess dress today. She was even wearing the princess crown she wore yesterday. In the camera, she was as beautiful as a flower. She was not a princess, but she was even more beautiful than one. Little Fatty Xian was mesmerized by her this morning. The moment he got out of the car, before the door was even closed, his father got out of the car and slipped under the car door. He ran over to Kiki. Little Fatty Xian and his father were dressed very fashionably today. They wore flowery shirts as jackets and even wore a pair of cool sunglasses. Poplar Fruit dressed his daughter up like a flower fairy. In fact, it was Zheng Yujia and Feng Beibei's suggestion. But he didn't pay much attention to his own dressing. He didn't wear Givenchy's clothes. The program didn't allow it. After all, Givenchy didn't pay them advertising fees. He only wore a very ordinary white t-shirt and pants. The reason was that he felt that wearing other colors under the hot sun of the Lust Plateau was simply torture. However, if a person was a clothes hanger, then he would look good wearing anything. Take poplar fruit for example. Ordinary clothes. Even a white t-shirt that many people couldn't pull off on him. There was an indescribable sense of fashion. Little fatty Xian stood there in a daze. He looked up at Kiki, who was only 2 months older than him, but taller than him by a head. Even through the glasses, she could feel the fiery joy in his eyes. He seemed to like Kiki very much. However, he was too shy to go up and greet Kiki. Yesterday, he performed well because there were many children around to offset the unfamiliarity. But now there were 2 children standing face to face. Little fatty Xian immediately shrank back. Kiki was also a little shy. She and Xian had only known each other for a day. They hadn't reached the level of familiarity where they could play without any worries. Moreover, Xian's father, Uncle Zhou Shimin, was also standing there. Kiki felt even more embarrassed. Wow, sister is so beautiful, isn't she? Zhou Shimin came over and smiled. Xian, did you say hello to sister? Xian shook his head, but his eyes never left Kiki, who was like a fairy in front of him. The surrounding staff and the audience who saw the scene on TV couldn't help but burst out laughing. This child was too interesting. He was so infatuated with his beautiful sister, and he didn't hide it at all. He's too shy to speak. Zhou Shimin explained to Poplar Fruit with a smile. In fact, they were all 3 or 4 years old. Xian wasn't 4 years old yet. This kind of behavior would only make people laugh, but they didn't have any opinions about him. Poplar Fruit understood this, so he smiled generously. It's okay, Kiki. You have to take the initiative to say hello to your brother. Hello, little brother Xian. Kiki snuggled up on her father's thigh. She was still a little shy, but she was much braver than Xian. This was because Xian was still foolishly smiling after Kiki took the initiative to say hello. Kiki is also wearing a skirt today. She's as beautiful as a princess, isn't she, Xian? Zhou Shimin squatted down and smiled. Xian nodded vigorously, but he still didn't have the courage to speak. However, Zhou Shimin's words still had an effect. Kiki, who loved to be praised as a princess, smiled with her eyes as beautiful as the crescent moon. She suddenly felt that the distance between her and this uncle in front of her had lessened. Kiki, you go with your brother. We should go up the mountain. Poplar Fruit decided to let Kiki take the initiative. Just like he said in the car before, the big sister had to drive the mood of the other brothers. Come, little brother Xian, let's go together. Kiki generously stretched out her right hand, which was wearing a long golden glove. Take off the glove first and give it to your father. Poplar Fruit said. You don't have to wear the glove. Although wearing the glove made her look like a princess, Kiki didn't particularly care about her image. She obediently took off the glove. Xian's hand was held by his sister, and he immediately beamed with joy. His eyes couldn't be seen, but from his raised eyebrows and the corners of his mouth, one could see that his mood was as bright as the sun when his sister Kiki held his hand. They started to climb the mountain with the team in front of them. The hillside was overgrown with weeds, so it wasn't as easy to slip as a slope. However, it was still a little steep, so Poplar Fruit held Kiki's hand and walked in front. Kiki held Xian's hand and walked in the middle. Zhou Shimin carefully held his son and walked at the back. Be careful here. Poplar Fruit warned. Xiaoxin sister. This somewhat childish and somewhat hoarse voice actually came from Xian, who had been shy for a long time just now. Although he was just looking at his sister and forgot to speak, little chubby Xian still had the heart to protect the flower. P.S. The main text is already over 2,000 words. These are all free. Let me explain a little more about the plot of the Where Are We Going, Daddy program. Since Poplar Fruit brought Kiki to participate in the program, then of course it will be from the perspective of the father and daughter to watch, or participate in the program. The other children's plots can be understood by watching the original video. There will occasionally be the audience's perspective like in the first few chapters. Or God's perspective. This is only necessary for the writing of the story, and there won't be too many. In addition, perhaps you will see that sometimes Kiki's plot overlaps with the original version. That is because the plot in the original version was really good, and Xiao Han liked it so much that he couldn't bear to give it up. When Xiao Han saw where his father went, he was shocked, because Xiao Han found that 80% of Xia Tian's plot of Kiki was in line with Xiao Han's design. Too similar. Too coincidental. One must know that when Xiao Han started writing this book and had a rough idea of Kiki's character and image, the second season hadn't even finished broadcasting yet. Everyone can also relate Xia Tian's character image to Kiki, so that everyone can have a visual image of Kiki. Therefore, even though Xiao Han tried his best to write a different third season of Where Are We Going, Daddy, but from the character's point of view, there shouldn't be much difference between Kiki and the original Xia Tian's performance in the program. If everyone sees it, please understand. Chapter 1159. After a while, the bright and beautiful princess with big eyes and her instant noodle-headed piglet rider were about to climb to the top of the mountain. Suddenly, a loud and clear singing voice floated from the top of the mountain. Listening to this tone, the strong smell of the yellow highland rushed over, and the accent of the western Shaanxi region, under the control of the singer, turned into a rather demonic howl. Wow! Kiki's first reaction was fear. She pulled brother Xianxian and ran behind her father. Xianxian didn't pay attention to the singing voice at the top of the mountain at all. He happily broke free from his father's hand and happily followed beside his sister. Kiki, look, who is that person riding a donkey on the mountain? Poplar Fruit pulled Kiki and said with a smile. Kiki stuck her head out, the princess crown on her head shining brightly. After getting used to the demonic voice that filled her ears, Kiki finally calmed down. Looking at it, she immediately smiled and said, I know, that is the village chief. On the top of the mountain, the 5 pairs of stars, fathers, and children gathered. Kiki, who arrived a little later, held her fluffy skirt. Worried that the clean and beautiful princess skirt would be stained with mud, she curiously left her father's side and walked around the village chief. Village chief, I know you are the village chief. Kiki giggled and then asked, Village chief, why are you riding a donkey? This is not a donkey, it is a fake donkey. Dejun, who Poplar Fruit always thought was very shy, was very active today. He walked up and said loudly to Kiki, A's donkey? A family's donkey? Kiki scratched her head and looked admiringly at Dejun, who knew so much, and asked, What is a family's donkey? Kiki had actually seen donkeys before, but the one in front of her was really strange. It is a fake one. It is not a real donkey. Dejun was also at a loss for words. Village chief, can I touch it? Kiki asked enviously. Of course. The village head Li Rue slightly bent down so that Kiki could reach his big red donkey. Kiki patted it lightly with her hand and said with a smile, So it's made of paper. The village chief is riding a paper donkey. After messing around for a while, they could finally begin. The village chief spoke in Mandarin with a Shaanxi accent that he had not learned for a long time. My fellow countrymen, welcome to. When Kiki heard the village chief speak, she was also overjoyed. She even imitated the village chief's tone. Needless to say, Kiki's talent in languages was as strong as Poplar Fruit's. She had only listened to it once, but she was able to learn almost the same as what the village chief said. Do you still remember the second season when the children were talking to the villagers about their dialect? At that time, Kiki had learned quite well from watching TV. However, Poplar Fruit did not allow Kiki to continue her performance. He patted Kiki's shoulder and said, When the village chief is speaking, you have to listen carefully. How can you imitate others? That's not polite. I am the village chief Li Rue. Welcome everyone. After the opening speech, the adults all started clapping. As for Kiki, she was so excited that she raised her white and tender arms. She had been looking forward to this program for more than 2 years. Under the guidance of the village chief, everyone looked at the hillside on the other side of the plateau. A large group of villagers wearing red robes had already arranged themselves into a formation. The long snake formation, the circular formation, it was a magnificent sight to behold. Fellow countrymen, your loved ones are here. Enter the village. The village chief waved the flag and shouted. Gongs, drums, and flutes were played. The men and women danced the most simple and passionate dance. In an instant, the yellow soil flew and the drums reverberated. The festive atmosphere awakened the entire plateau. There. Luya's eyes were sharp as he called Nuai to look towards the front of the crowd. Poplar Fruit also looked over. He suddenly laughed. The villager with a white towel wrapped around his waist was Producer Xia. He squatted there and carefully lit the firecrackers. Then he ran away with his head shrunk. Kiki, it's time to light the firecrackers. Poplar Fruit pointed for Kiki to see. It was a bit like the traditional opening ceremony of a movie. However, it seemed like our program was more ostentatious. Everyone was dressed in red. This meant that the program would have a good performance when it was broadcasted. Walking past the hillside, Daddy Xing and the cute children were also welcomed by the singing and dancing villagers as they walked towards the village. With so many people, Poplar Fruit held his daughter on top of his head and let her sit on his neck as they walked forward. Sitting high, they could see further. Kiki giggled on her father's neck. It seemed like she still liked the lively atmosphere. Dad, I want to sit too. Xianxian saw that Kiki had run to such a high place. He quickly pulled his father's hand. You want to sit too? Zhou Shimin was shocked, but he still carried his son. However, he couldn't help but complain. Xianxian, you need to lose weight. You eat so much every day. How can I carry you? Of course, Zhou Shimin was just joking with his son. How could he not handle a chubby child who only weighed a few kilograms? If he couldn't even handle his son, how could he become an Olympic champion? Xianxian urged his father to walk closer. Xianxian began to smile foolishly at Sister Kiki. The surrounding noise seemed to have disappeared. In his eyes, there was only the little sister who was like a sunflower sprinkled with sunlight. But Chi-Chi didn't notice that the aunties who were dancing the Yanko song around her, and the uncles who were beating the waist drum with all their might had already attracted her attention. She hugged her father's head and watched the villagers' performance with a feast for her eyes. Come down for a walk, okay? It had to be said that little chubby Xian was indeed fat. Zhou Shimin, who was 1.6 meters tall, could carry him for a while. However, if they kept walking like this, he really couldn't stand it. Poplar Fruit heard his voice. He also said to Kiki, Kiki, let's walk together? You can walk with Xianxian. The other brothers don't need to be carried by Dad. It was true. Nuai and Dejun were walking hand in hand. The two of them were talking loudly about something. It was too noisy, so Yanghua couldn't hear them. Kong Kong was walking with them, but she was more aloof and didn't want to hold hands with her brother. Poplar Fruit obviously wasn't tired. He just wanted Kiki to carry Xianxian, who was unwilling to come down. Kiki obediently came down. As expected, when Xianxian saw Kiki come down, he immediately shouted that he wanted to come down. You're ignoring us, right? Zhou Shimin saw Xianxian come down and naturally turned around. Then he laughed and hugged Kiki's sister. His voice was a little broken as he shouted, I'll take Xianxian brother away. Kiki looked back at her father and giggled. She pulled Xianxian forward. Kiki, your dress. Poplar Fruit shouted. Xianxian immediately helped Kiki hold up her dress. He really acted like a knight, just a little chubby. The two children happily left their fathers behind and walked forward. People couldn't help but sigh. They were really at an innocent age. Tomorrow is National Day. I wish everyone a happy National Day. Also, there are double monthly votes for National Day. Xiao Han shamelessly begs everyone to vote for him. Chapter 1160. Children, let's go together. Unknowingly, as the cute children played hand in hand, everyone came to the open space at the entrance of the village. Yanghua saw with a glance that their luggage had already been sent to the open space. The village chief had already taken off his donkey suit. A large red cloth was wrapped around his waist, and a white towel was wrapped around his head. He was bare-shouldered and wearing a short jacket. My skirt is too long. Kiki began to feel that beauty was a burden. Sister, let me help you. Little Chuxian, who had been following closely, lowered his head and helped Sister Kiki lift her skirt. Kiki, come and gather. Yanghua called out, and Chi-Chi ran over with a smile on her face. Little chubby Xian didn't even pay attention to his father as he followed behind Chi-Chi, bouncing up and down. The adults all laughed. Poplar Fruit felt that if they went home at this time, and Zhou Shimin didn't pay attention, little Chu Xian would really be taken away by him. Xian, come back. Zhou Shimin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. When you grow up and get married, you have to go home too. Xian, who had forgotten his father because of his sister, ran back like a little meatball. Xian is so cute. Kiki smiled happily as she leaned on her father. It was time to choose a house. When they learned that the houses here were all cave dwellings, Poplar Fruit smiled and said to Kiki, Kiki, the houses here are different from the ones we live in. Everyone dug a cave in the mountain to live in. Good. That's great. Chi-Chi clapped her hands happily. She was still immersed in the joyous atmosphere from earlier. However, when the village head took out the props to choose a house, Kiki began to come back to her senses. The little girl had watched 2 seasons of Where Did Daddy Go? And memorized all the plots. She naturally knew what it meant to choose a house. Papa, how are we going to choose? Will they choose the worst house? Kiki pulled her father's hand and asked Poplar Fruit to squat down and listen to her. She was still a little shy and didn't dare to let everyone hear. It's fine. You can choose whatever you like. Poplar Fruit chuckled and said, whether you live well or poorly, it's actually a kind of experience. Anyway, Daddy will be with you. What are you afraid of? That's true. Then let's take the worst house. Kiki rolled her eyes as she hugged her father's neck and said with a smile. Poplar Fruit almost sprained his waist because of his daughter's sudden change in attitude. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he rubbed her little head and said, okay. Village head. Kiki held her father's hand and walked in front of the village chief. She raised her head and said with a serious smile, Village chief, I want the worst house from Papa. I also want the worst house. Xian, who was still looking at the things in the bamboo basket with his head down, heard the voice and moved. He also straightened up and said in a childish voice, AI, it's hopeless. Zhou Shimin was speechless. The active Lu Yi ran over and hugged him and laughed. No. The village chief refused. He explained with a smile and comforted the children. If they voluntarily chose, then this super interesting part of choosing a house would be meaningless. In this case, Poplar Fruit discussed with Kiki and volunteered to be the last to let the other brothers choose first. Everyone look here. There is a little lamb, a broom, flour, corn and a paper cut. The village chief introduced. Whichever one you choose, you will live in that cave. I like the little lamb. Kiki whispered in her father's ear and said, Papa, can I play with the little lamb? It's so cute. When Chi-Chi saw the little lamb covered in white fur, with its red nose and mouth, lying weakly in the bamboo basket, she felt as if the softness in her heart had been struck. However, she said that she would be the last to choose, so Kiki could only watch as the first to choose, Kong Gij, picked the little lamb. Everyone pay attention. You can't go back on your choice. You have to live wherever you choose. The village chief reminded them. You like to play with the little lamb? Poplar Fruit laughed, sure. You can ask Kong Gij. Kiki timidly looked at the cold and domineering CEO, Kong Gij. She pulled her father's clothes and said, Papa, I don't dare. It's okay. Kong Gij is a very good person. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Go and ask Kong Gij. Kong Gij, can I borrow the little lamb to see? Kiki mustered up her courage to negotiate with Kong Gij. It was surprisingly smooth. Kong nodded and said, okay, you play. Although she still had a cool expression, Kong was actually a good child with a cold face and a kind heart. Thank you, Kong Gij. Kiki smiled sweetly. Kong was a little hesitant. She wanted to just wave her hand, but in the end she said no need. When choosing a house, the most active person was Lu Yi. He would laugh for a while, frown for a while, and whisper to Hu Jun as if he had gone crazy. However, those who were familiar with Lu Yi knew that this was normal. He was originally a little princess who could not grow up. Lu Yi sometimes felt that the worst house would be Hu Jun's family's lamb, and sometimes felt that it would be Zhou Shimin's family's corn. His expressions were so exaggerated that it made people laugh. But in reality, variety shows should be like this. For a father like Poplar Fruit who only accompanied his daughter, he did not have many opportunities to appear on screen. The reason why he could still appear on screen was because of Kiki's outstanding performance and Poplar Fruit's appearance. Finally, only Lu Yi and Poplar Fruit's family were left. Poplar Fruit smiled and said to Lu Yi, "It's your turn to choose. You guys go first." Lu Yi said politely. Poplar Fruit looked at Kiki, who was not willing to let go of the little lamb, and said with a smile, "It's okay." She said that she would be the last one to choose, so she will be the last one to choose. Hence, Lu Yi called Nuo over and pointed at the broom and window ornaments in the bamboo basket. He told him that these were the last two choices. Then he stood up and covered his face and said, "Choose yourself. Daddy won't watch. Fate is in your hands." In the end, he accidentally tripped over the luggage on the floor. The audience burst out in laughter. The program team even added a caption that said, "Mercilessly tripped by fate." In the end, Nuo chose the broom. This was also the room that Lu Yi thought was the best. He always thought that the program team was fooling everyone. The worst house was definitely the best. However, the audience who had been watching the program all this while were already secretly laughing. The village chief's silent laughter and Lu Ye's exaggerated comments repeatedly appeared. Under the editing of the editors, all these signs made people feel that the house that Lu Ye's family chose would definitely not be any better. Tomorrow is National Day. I wish everyone a happy National Day. Also, National Day is double the monthly votes. Xiao Han shamelessly begs everyone to vote more monthly votes, greater than over equal to. Chapter 1161. Before going to look at the house, there was one more step. It was also the step that Kiki was very familiar with, handing in her phone, toys and snacks. When she was watching TV and saw that brother Kimmy was unwilling to hand over his toys, she said, if it was Kiki, Kiki would definitely hand over all her toys to the village chief. These words were easy for Kiki, who was only around 2 years old at the time. If she really handed over all her toys, she would definitely cry nonstop. Even Poplar Fruit couldn't handle it. Fortunately, Kiki was now 4 years old, and her thoughts were much more mature than before. After hesitating for a moment, she took the initiative to let her father open the leather box. She took out her Barbie dolls and other toys that she would bring with her when traveling. She even took out Kiki's favorite yellow duck when she was bathing. She carefully placed them in the plastic box. "Uncle Village Chief, you have to take good care of Lucy and Helen. You can't hurt them." Kiki reluctantly stood at the side and reminded the village chief. "Okay, Kiki, don't worry. When you go home in 3 days, the village chief will definitely return them to you intact," the village chief said with a smile. Clang! Before he finished speaking, Brother Dajuan threw something in while holding on to it. Yeah. A group of crows flew in front of the dumbfounded village chief and Kiki. The audience laughed. Chi-Chi's lips immediately pouted. Her sunny face turned cloudy and she was about to cry. The village chief didn't know how important those Barbie dolls were in Kiki's heart. Poplar Fruit quickly came up and hugged his daughter's little head. He smiled comfortingly and said, It's okay. It's not broken. Our Barbie dolls are of much better quality. The clothes don't look good anymore." Kiki pouted and complained. "They don't look bad. Look, they're still fine." The Poplar Fruit pushed aside the debris on top and pointed it out to Kiki. It was really intact. Kiki's cloudy mood gradually cleared up. Poplar Fruit pointed at Xian, who was arguing with Zhou Shimin, to distract Kiki. "Look, brother Xian doesn't want to hand over the snacks. As his sister, shouldn't you go and comfort him?" After Kiki left, Poplar Fruit and the village had looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Dajuan and Kong, the two kids with a strong sense of justice, joined forces to form an inspection team. Not only were they proactive in handing in their belongings, one of them even snatched his father's phone, and the other reported to the village chief that his father had stolen a packet of pickles. It was a stark contrast to the children's performance in the previous 2 seasons. However, anyone could see that the two kids weren't acting. They both had hearts of gold. That was the attraction of this kind of reality show. The children didn't hide their feelings. On the other hand, Xian's performance was the most normal. He didn't want to hand over his snacks. The reason was ridiculous. He complained that he was always hungry. He really was a little foodie. The curly-haired Xianxian's feelings for food really made the audience want to laugh and pity him. At this time Kiki, who had received instructions from her father, walked over and asked Zhou Shimin, "What's wrong with brother Xianxian?" Zhou Shimin told her and then asked Kiki, "Did you hand over your snacks?" "I did." Kiki waved her hands and said generously, "Look, your sister has already handed them over. You have to learn from your sister." Zhou Shimin continued to persuade his son. Xianxian was still a little hesitant. He pouted and muttered, "But I'm hungry." At this time, his voice was very small. He didn't want to make a fool of himself in front of his favorite sister Kiki. "Xianxian, it's okay." Kiki walked closer. She didn't care about her beautiful dress. She bent down and supported her knees to persuade her brother. "If you're hungry, you can come to me. My papa can make delicious food for you. My papa's food is super delicious." On one hand, there was the promise of delicious food. On the other hand, there was the persuasion of his favorite sister Kiki. Xianxian, who had a gloomy face, immediately stood up and said in a loud voice, "Okay." He stood up, took out a box of candy from his bag, and handed it to the village chief who was standing aside and watching. The village chief praised Xianxian, but Xianxian wasn't listening at all. He looked at Sister Qiqi who was giving him a cute thumbs up and smiled so widely that his eyes couldn't be seen. He was so happy that he felt like he was floating in the air. Maybe Poplar Fruit didn't care, but in fact Kiki's performance was all thanks to Fong Beibei's encouraging education. Kiki was also subtly influenced by her brother. She knew how to give her brother some encouragement and help him do better. After a long time, everyone was hungry, let alone the children led by Xianxian. The program team specially invited the local children. The 5 little ones swarmed towards the fragrant noodle stall. Especially Kiki, she was not only hungry but also curious. She had been circling around the steaming noodle stall, and from time to time, she would look over. Zhou Shimin was worried that they would touch the hot soup, so he quickly said, "Everyone stay away. Don't touch it." Xianxian, who had been complaining about how hungry he was, immediately forgot about his own hunger when he saw Qiqi's sister walk past him. He eagerly followed her and pulled up her skirt, even calling out considerately, "Princess, don't burn yourself." The warm-hearted handsome brother also pulled his 2 younger siblings away, telling them to stay away from her. Just now, when Kiki turned around, she was almost hugged by Xianxian. Unfortunately, his arms were short. Fortunately, it was just a touch. Poplar Fruit's eyelids twitched. "Papa, I want to eat noodles." Kiki didn't feel anything. She turned her head and said to her father, "This doesn't seem to be noodles." Before Poplar Fruit's voice died away, the village chief had already begun to explain. It turned out that this was the local famous rice flour press. The rice flour press in front of everyone was used to press the dough into long, round noodles. Well, in fact, it was also noodles, but the method was different. Lu Yexian jumped up and gave it a try. In the end, he carelessly broke the pressure bar, and was reprimanded by a few righteous children. Broken. The villagers had to think about it. Several people tried to press the broken press lever. Everyone knew the principle of the lever. After the lever was broken, it took a lot of effort. "Brother Zhou, help me take care of Kiki." Poplar Fruit rolled up his sleeves and said to Zhou Shimin with a smile, "Let me try." "Is this okay?" The village chief looked at Poplar Fruit doubtfully. The villagers also said that this had become a pure labor. Poplar Fruit, a big star with delicate skin and tender flesh, shouldn't perform. "It's okay." Poplar Fruit took the press lever and said with a smile, "I'm very strong." "Papa, come on." Kiki was completely excited. She waved her small hands and cheered for her father. "Uncle, come on." "Uncle Poplar Fruit, come on." At first it was Xianxian. Later a group of children shouted. It was very lively. Even the cold President Kong shouted a few times. "It's a new month. It's just double the monthly votes. Everyone, vote more monthly votes." Chapter 1162. With the children's encouragement and his daughter's encouragement, Poplar Fruit exerted some force in his right arm. The broken lever that required 2 people to press down slowly lowered, and a row of round noodles fell into the boiling water. Wow! Uncle Poplar Fruit is amazing! The 5 children became the kings of cheering. Thanks to Poplar Fruit's strength, the hungry children were able to quickly eat the noodles. After the scalding, they were scooped out and poured in the gravy before they were ready to eat. Lu Yi, who wanted to make up for his mistake, wanted to give the first bowl to Kiki, but Poplar Fruit quickly stopped him. He smiled and said, "Brother Yi, give this bowl to another child. She doesn't eat spicy food." Kiki also waved her hand and politely said, "Thank you, uncle, but I don't eat spicy food." In the end, Poplar Fruit sped up and brought the bowl to his daughter's side. There was no table, so Poplar Fruit squatted down and held the bowl, letting Kiki pick up the chopsticks to eat the noodles. The little girl was also hungry, so she ate in big mouthfuls, completely disregarding her princess image. At this moment, in a corner that no one noticed, but the cameraman faithfully recorded, Kong Kong, who had finished eating early, was picking up the pen and recording board that the staff had scattered all over the floor and did not have time to clean up. She then carried them to the village chief. The village chief then praised Kong Kong, who had silently done a good deed. However, Hu Jun did not express his feelings in front of the camera, or rather in front of his son, so he still had his usual poker face. Poplar Fruit saw this and was worried that Hu Jun would dampen the child's enthusiasm. He also wanted Kiki to learn from Kong Kong's dedication. He held Kiki's hand and smiled to the children, including Kiki, and said, "Brother Kong Kong did a very good deed just now. Let's all applaud for him, okay? Brother Kong Kong is so awesome." Kiki was the first to respond to her father's call. She clapped hard and looked at Brother Kong Kong with sparkling eyes. Even the cold President Kong felt a little embarrassed. He turned his head and walked to the side amidst everyone's applause. Although Kong Kong didn't have much of a reaction, he was actually very happy. But just like his father, he kept his feelings bottled up in his heart. This was not good. After finishing their meal, the 5 pairs of adorable fathers began to take their children to the new house that they had just chosen. Poplar Fruit held Kiki's hand and prepared to look for their house, but Kiki expressed her reluctance to part with Brother Kong Kong's little lamb. "It's okay. We'll stay in this village. After we take a nap, we'll go to Brother Kong Kong's house to play with the lambs." Poplar Fruit smiled as she carried her daughter with one hand and dragged her suitcase with the other. "Little lamb? Little Yang." Kiki's attention suddenly shifted and she giggled. "What are you laughing at? What happened to the lamb? Is it that funny?" Poplar Fruit still didn't understand. Kiki hugged her father's neck and said with a smile, "Papa, your surname is Yang, my surname is Yang, you are Big Yang, then I am Little Yang. Little Yang likes Little Yang, Little Yang likes Big Yang likes Little Yang. Does Little Yang like Big Yang?" It was like a tongue twister. The cameraman next to them was confused by Kiki's words, but it was not difficult for Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit immediately understood his daughter's meaning. He laughed heartily and said, "Daddy knows that Little Yang likes Little Yang, but it doesn't necessarily like Big Yang. Xiao Yang, can you go and coax Xiao Yang and make it like Xiao Yang too?" "Okay." Kiki also understood her father's words and happily agreed. This fast tongue-twister dialogue was retained by the editor, but they still asked Poplar Fruit to add the correct subtitles for their dialogue. When Kiki got the last window flower, Poplar Fruit really thought that it was the worst house. On the way, when Poplar Fruit said this to Kiki, Kiki immediately nodded and agreed with her father's opinion. "What did you think?" Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. "What did Papa think?" Kiki also looked at her father with a smile. Her big eyes were like clear water drops, reflecting the blue sky. "Let's say it together and see if we think the same, okay?" Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. Okay. Chi-Chi stretched out her little finger that was as white as jade and said, "Let me count 1, 2, 3. The house where Kimmy's brother lives." The first episode of the first season, Uncle Xiaoji. Although the father and daughter expressed different things, their thoughts were surprisingly the same. Seeing this, the audience couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. She's really his biological daughter. This wasn't sarcasm. When they came to their house, they found that it was a surprise. Poplar Fruit was surprised and said, "Kiki, look, our room is good." Really, the bright and clean big cave was 60 or 70 square meters. The long wall was hung with picture frames and many window flowers that Kiki had just taken. If there was a shortcoming, it was that this big cave had the kitchen, the study, and the bedroom. Next to the big bed was a stove with a big pot. But it didn't matter, because the whole room was well ventilated, and the ceramic stove was spotless. "The house is beautiful," Kiki also praised. In fact, Kiki was also a girl. Of course, she liked a clean and comfortable environment. Although she wanted to experience a bad house, if there was a beautiful house to live in, she would be full of joy. "Well, let's change the dress, okay?" Poplar Fruit entered the house, and after looking around with Kiki, he found a piece of clothing from the box to cover the camera in the room. "Well, the dress is too big, and it will get dirty." Kiki nodded, and asked her father to help her take off the fluffy princess dress. Of course, she was still wearing a cute sleeveless vest and small shorts. But the shorts were too short. Poplar Fruit changed his daughter into a comfortable short-sleeve t-shirt and short pants, and then uncovered the clothes that covered the camera. "I'll fold the dress." Kiki immediately squatted down on the bed and helped her father. She was not skilled, and in the end, Poplar Fruit had to do it. However, this kind of thought was precious. "Papa, I want to go to Brother Kong Kong's house to see the lamb." Kiki had just changed her clothes and wanted to come down. Poplar Fruit was arranging the luggage, and when he turned around, he saw that the little girl was already putting on her shoes. No, you have to sleep at noon." Poplar Fruit hurriedly stopped her. "Why?" Kiki was carried back by her father, sat on the bed and asked with her feet shaking. "Because if you don't sleep at noon, you won't have the energy to play games in the afternoon." Poplar Fruit walked to the bed and laughed. But I'm still a little full, and I can't sleep." Kiki hugged her father's neck and said coquettishly, "That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."